Chapter 2101 For Freedom. Slave was a term that was slowly disappearing, at least in the City of Life. Only a few conservative and stubborn feudal lords far away from the City of Life were unwilling to let go of the slavery contract and their status of an upper-class member. However, this situation was starting to be challenged during this period. The elves within the lands already knew what was happening outside. They were longing for freedom as much as those who had been enslaved for more than a century, and they were willing to pay a high price for that. The Brewster family's land was located at the southwestern side of the Wind Forest. When Sally became the new elven princess, Elliot's status also rose, and the Brewster family's land increased by more than twofolds. The Brewster family had been at the forefront of supplying the elves with food for many years. Their land was far away from the City of Life, and they had numerous slaves and servants. These slaves were doing the toughest jobs, feeding the entire Wind Forest, but did not have enough food for themselves. In addition, they would often be oppressed, beaten, and scolded by the Brewster family. The voices for slaves to be freed had been ringing throughout the Wind Forest. However, this land that was surrounded by metal thorns remained silent, and utilized force and suppression to ensure absolute obedience. All slaves were cuffed up in heavy metal chains, but their work did not get smaller. They were strictly prohibited from communicating with each other, and all freedom-related news were stopped from spreading. If a slave broke the rules, they would be tortured inhumanely, and might even lose their lives because of that. There was even a corpse half-eaten by vultures hanging high on a pole in the farm. "We should take Joe's body back. He was so kind. If not to save his comrade back then, he would not have broken his leg, and would not have been picking dew here for a century and end up being hung dead on the pole by his own people." In the dark and damp slave dormitory, an old elf turned over. The shackles on his foot that were cuffed to a wooden pole clanked. He looked at the lonely body hanging on the pole under the moonlight through the small gap between wooden planks. There were tens of elf slaves in the dormitory, but everyone was silent. "But the door is locked from outside. Besides, there would definitely be someone keeping watch of Joe's body. They want to hang more bodies on the pole to let us know what will happen if we fight back. This is what I heard in the afternoon." "This is a trap," someone said in the dark. Someone sighed. The air was filled with desolation and despair. "So what? I just want my old friend to return to the arms of Mother Earth in a dignified way instead of letting those disgusting strange birds feed on him in humiliation." The old man who spoke first sat up on his bed. There seemed to be a glimmer in his eyes in the dark as he said, "Back then, when he threw himself bravely at those demons that invaded the Wind Forest, he did not expect himself to come back alive. I want to take his body back. I might be hanging up there with him. At least I would feel a bit better." The old man got out of bed, and stood on the narrow walkway. He looked at his fellow elves enveloped in darkness, as though he was waiting for something. Silence. More silence. The old man smiled. He turned and walked towards the door. "I think you would need someone to kick the door down for you." A fit elf jumped down from the upper deck of the double-decker bed. "The pole is too high. You might not be able to climb up there. You should leave this to me." An elf as skinny as a monkey jumped down nimbly without making a single sound despite the heavy chains on his foot. The old elf looked at the two elves, and a gratified smile replaced the despair on his face as he nodded and said, "Sure. Stand back a little. I'll kick the door down. When we get out, I'll run westward and lure them away. You two go get Joe's body down," the strong elf said. "Let me lure them away." "I am nimbler," the skinny elf said. "No, Albin. After you bring the body down, flip over the fence and leave. I know the metal thorn walls are unable to stop you." The strong elf grabbed the skinny elf by his shoulder with a smile, and said, "Take a look at the outside world on my behalf. We've never left the farm ever since we were born. The world outside must be fantastic. Joe used to tell us about freedom, but we've never seen it. Maybe you would see it after leaving the farm." Anton reached his big hand out and stroked Albin's head. "Remember, don't come back." "Anton," Albin choked up. In the darkness, there were a few stifles. Anton retracted his hand, took 3 deep breaths, and dashed forward first, using his side to ram into the wooden door. The sturdy wooden door flew right out, together with the door frame. "For freedom!" Anton looked back and shouted loudly toward the entire row of slave dormitory, breaking the silence of the night. The sounds of chains clanked in the dormitories, but all was still. "Go!" Albin wiped a tear away, and crouched down to run out of the door. In no time at all, he darted into the bushes at the side, like a nimble monkey swinging from tree to tree as he dashed towards Joe's body, which was hanging on the pole. Anton glanced in the direction Albin had gone, and took large strides in the opposite direction. On his way, he picked up a long pole, and whacked everything in his way. The sound of the escape woke the guards at the slave dormitory, and an ear-piercing siren was sounded. Immediately, torches lit up the entire courtyard. Guards quickly took control of all important routes, and discovered Anton, who was running without a care. Someone used a low-level ice spell, and an icicle pierced his calf. Before Anton could even wave his pole at the guard in front of him, he had already fallen to the ground. The guard went over and lifted the metal pole in his hands as he smashed Anton's other leg with all his might. With a thud, that leg was immediately bent in an awkward angle. "For freedom!" Anton shouted with his head held high. He lay on the ground, waving the wooden pole in his hand hysterically, and smashing that guard in his leg. Bam! The wooden pole was smashed into pieces. The guard's leg was also broken. The guard held his leg as he fell to the ground, shouting at the other guards that came over, "Beat him to death! I want him dead!" The other guards rushed over with their weapons, and started attacking Anton without reserve. "For freedom! For freedom! For freedom!" Anton's voice trailed off, leaving only the sound of weapons hitting meat. "Anton!" Albin climbed up to the highest pole and witnessed the scene. He pulled the rope hanging Joe's body to the pole. The slaves in the other dormitories who witnessed this started to rebel. They started hitting the fence and wood as they let out desperate and furious howls. "Shut up!" The guards used their metal poles to whack those elves who attempted to stick their arms out of the dormitories to ensure order. "Someone stole the corpse! Catch him!" At the same time, a guard discovered Albin, who was standing on the pole. 2 flying steeds rose to the sky towards Albin. The old elf carried Joe's body on his back as he shouted at Albin, "Albin, leave!" Albin looked at this familiar farm. There was no warmth at all. It was just like a carnivorous monster, and there was only endless fear of it. Albin turned to look at the world outside of the fence, the boundless sky and endless vegetation, as well as a purple-striped griffin in the sky, diving down. The strong slaves banged open the wooden door, and furious slaves surged out. The shrill alarms rang throughout the sky above the Brewster family. "Go back to your cells! You lowly and stupid fellows!" The guards didn't panic. The magic casters were already building ice walls and mud walls. Under the suppression of absolute power, numbers couldn't actually provide an advantage. A smooth and thick ice wall created an even sturdier cell, allowing them to mock those struggling slaves behind it at will. Their bodies and wood left faint marks on the ice walls. The elven slaves roared in anger and helplessness. They watched the guards humiliate Anton's body beyond the ice wall helplessly. They felt desperate over this helplessness. It was as if fate had never given them a chance to choose. Right then, a giant shadow was cast down from the sky. The thick ice wall suddenly shattered. The magic caster's wands turned into dust too. Everyone looked up and saw the giant beast that glowed with purple light under the moonlight. And the beautiful elf with a golden glow sitting on that giant beast. "It's Princess Irina," some elven slaves shouted. Panic appeared in the guard's eyes for the very first time. Elliot came out in his pajamas, frowning, and said, "What's happening?" A middle-aged elf that looked like a butler approached, and respectfully said, "Chief, there are some issues with the slaves at the farm. We have already sent the garrison over. There won't be any big trouble." "Humph! These lowly fellows! How dare they make trouble after I fed and clothed them, allowing them to survive?" Elliot's expression turned cold. "Kill a few more of them this time, and hang them with that old chap who tried to escape a few days ago. I want to see how much they want to leave here." "Yes." The butler left with a smile after receiving their order. Elliot yawned and returned to his bedroom. Ever since he was removed from his position, returned to his fiefdom, and felt the atmosphere of freedom that was raging through the wind forest, Elliot locked down his fiefdom, and stopped any information from spreading between the slaves and the servants. He didn't know what happened out there. He only wanted to be the unparalleled ruler in this castle and this fiefdom, and hold the power to kill and rule. The facts proved that what he did was very effective. When the other feudal lords were breaking the slave contracts, forced to let go of their slaves, he was still controlling thousands of slaves. They were the main workforce on the farms that provided for the Brewster family and the Wind Forest. Thousands of Brewster family's soldiers in battle gear converged towards the slaves' circle under the butler's lead. The slaves didn't have the right to live in the castle. They were kept in the short houses beyond the castle like cattle, so it was called the slaves' circle. There were iron fences that were dozens of meters tall surrounding the short houses. They were also topped with sharp and poisonous iron spikes. Fire lit up the slaves' circle, and noises could be heard from within. It was battle cries and cheers. "Extinguish the fire! Catch all those despicable fellows who dare to revolt," the butler coldly ordered. The squad answered, and a water magic caster stepped forward, and began to chant spells. There were also melee elf fighters in full battle gear that opened the doors in 3 directions and charged in. The slaves were just 2-legged cattle with longer lifespan. Those who looked good or possessed magical talents wouldn't have been kept here. With those shackles, they were completely powerless in front of the powerful army. There were even elven soldiers who thought the guards had to have fallen asleep. Otherwise, the guards at the slaves' circle would be able to squash the so-called rebellion. However, when they rushed into the slaves' circle in an attempt to solve all the problems by charging in and then return to their sleep, they were shocked by what they saw. The battle was already over. All the guards were rounded up and tied up in the empty field in the middle. Apart from injuries, there was also endless fear in their eyes. Meanwhile, those elven slaves in shackles were surrounding those guards. The slaves looked angry and fanatical. Of course, the soldiers weren't shocked by those elven slaves. It was that giant purple-striped griffin that hovered in midair and the beautiful elf on the griffin's back. "It's Princess Irina," some elves exclaimed. Some elven soldiers that were charging forward even halted in their steps instinctively. Looking at Irina, they didn't even have the courage to charge forward. They seemed to understand why the usually docile slaves suddenly became agitated and manic tonight. The butler forced himself to go forward, and respectfully asked Irina, "Princess Irina, I am Dirk from the Brewster family, may I know what your purpose is in coming here so late in the night?" The Brewster family wasn't a powerful family, and even the chief, Elliot, was just a 9th-tier magic caster. They didn't have an 8th-tier powerhouse present. Moreover, this place was located far from the City of Life. Even if they asked for help now, High Priestess Helena might not be able to get here in time. As for Irina's strength, everyone with a brain in the Wind Forest knew about it clearly. Now, she was here, on the side of the rebelling slaves. He was in a panic. "To bring some elves away and kill those who are not fit to be called elves," Irina said coldly. Dirk went white. He knew very well that he was perhaps one of those fellows who were not fit to be called elves in Irina's eyes. "Albin, right? Find Anton and Joe's murderer and avenge them." Irina looked at a thin and small elf below. Albin nodded and picked up a blood-stained dagger on the ground before walking towards those tied-up guards. The guard leader, who was dumped in the corner with both his legs bent, was frightened, and shouted, "Don't kill me! I didn't kill him!" "They did," Albin went forward silently. He stabbed the commander's thigh, and then pulled the dagger downwards. The flesh and muscles turned outward, and blood gushed out. "Ah!" That leader let out a horrible shriek. All the guards and the soldiers standing close by went white too. Some of them recognized Albin. He was the skinny guy in charge of slaughtering the animals in the farm. "This is for Joe." "Of course, this isn't enough. You stabbed him 12 times, and I'll repay you double for that. In addition to Anton's 24 stabs, I'll make sure you won't die before I finish the stabbing." "I promise," Albin said to that guard's leader coldly before dragging the dagger down on his left thigh, and pulling a tendon out. More than 10 elves were tortured to death by this fellow in the past. His methods were far crueler than this. Those guards that were tied up already began to shiver in fear. They had never expected that those slaves who were at their mercy before would become an existence that could decide their life and death. Furthermore, they would really kill. Dirk and the elven soldiers were terrified and caught in between. The 48th stab. Albin stabbed the dagger into that guard's heart before letting go and taking a few steps back. He knelt down next to Anton's body with a plop, and cried his heart out. Irina removed all their shackles with a wave of her hand, and then said to the 3,000-odd elves below, "Take your revenge. I hope you won't leave here with hatred. Then, start a new life." All the elven slaves were quiet for a moment. Some of them picked up the swords, and walked towards those guards. "Princess Irina. I think the High Priestess wouldn't want to see this. I hope you can reconsider it. Princess Sally will return in a few more days." Dirk stepped forward nervously. "The things that I did were all what Helena didn't want to see, including my existence." Irina looked at Dirk and suddenly laughed. "Then, what do you think I should do? Should I disappear completely?" Dirk was speechless. He wanted that to happen, but he didn't dare to say it out loud, nor could he make it happen. Before Dirk could say anything else, Irina took out a little black notebook, and loudly declared, "Dirk Brewster. The #1 butler under Elliot. The absolute executor of his orders. The executioner tainted with the blood of many elves. Today, I declare the death sentence on you. You will be killed right on the spot." "No." Dirk turned around, attempting to flee. A beam of light lit up his body, and he turned into dust instantly. All the elven soldiers immediately broke down psychologically and dispersed, and those elven guards were almost all killed by the slaves. Only 5 of them were left, and they were protected by a few elven slaves. They were forced to become guards. "They are kind, and even provided help to us before," an elderly elf said loudly, convincing his companions to let those few guards go. "Princess Irina! Princess Irina!" All the elves looked at Irina, and cheered with passion in their eyes. Just as they thought they were going to descend into a hopeless life again, she appeared. She broke through the ice wall, disarmed the guards, taking away their weapons and magic wands, and killed the evil and scary Dirk. She was the light in this endless dark night, bringing them hope. "Now, I'll bring you away from here to start your life anew," Irina loudly said to the elves below. "You're free now." The iron fence fell after she said that, and burned to ashes in the flames. "We're free! Free!" A light glowed in the eyes of the elves. They looked at their vast surroundings. Everything seemed to look different without the iron fence. "Let's go. Let me show you the way," Irina said. A beam of light shone in front of them, and a path of light led into the distance. The elves followed the light and walked forward. Albin carried Anton's body on his back, and softly said, "Let's go, Anton. I'll bring you to see the world outside." The small figure carried the body forward on his crouched back. He even rejected help from the others stubbornly. The castle close by was fully lit up, with its gates tightly shut. Irina flicked a glance at the castle, and inwardly said, "Elliot, your life belongs to Shirley." I'll let you keep it for a while longer. Long after that, Elliot looked out of the castle, and asked, Is she gone? Chief, they're already gone. They have gone southwards, someone outside answered. Is she really gone? Elliot couldn't quite believe it. Yes. The slaves' circle is already empty, and all the slaves have escaped, the person outside answered, and then continued to ask, Shall we go after them? Elliot jumped out from the bunker angrily, and slapped that young elf before saying, Are you going after them alone? That elf took half a step back, and shook his head with aggrievement. Damn Irina, Elliot paced around in the room. Then, he suddenly stopped and clapped his hands together. Yes. We have to go after them. Elliot pointed to that elf earlier, and said, You, bring 500 men and pursue them westward. Me, that elf went white, but he quickly asked, But they have gone southwards. Shouldn't we go to the south if we want to pursue them? What do you intend to do if we really catch up with them? Elliot looked at him. That elf was taken aback with a terrified expression. Then, why don't freaking chase them westward? Elliot gave him a kick. Yes, 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 that elf scrambled and tumbled away. Soon, a troop of 500 cavalrymen rode out and pursued westward. Elliot ordered, Request reinforcements from the City of Life immediately, and then send a letter with the eagle to the High Priestess. Tell her that Irina has killed hundreds of Brewster family's guards and soldiers, stole 3,000 slaves, and escaped to the southwest. The Brewster family has already sent troops after them, and we seek reinforcements. The eagle took off from the castle, and flew towards the City of Life. Half an hour later, the castle received a response letter from the City of Life. Elliot almost ate that letter after reading it. That damned old woman! Is she that afraid of Irina? Damn it! Damn it! In the starry cave, Helena said to Sally below, Do you know why I'm not sending the troops? Elliot isn't a trustworthy person. He doesn't have the guts to fight with Irina, including mounting any forms of resistance, Sally calmly replied. Furthermore, freeing the slaves is already common sense in the Wind Forest. This is an irresistible trend. Seems like you agree with what Irina did. Helena looked at Sally. I stand with the trend. The majority of the elves in the Wind Forest will agree with what she did now. Sally was still as calm as ever. Helena laughed, and lamented, Elliot wouldn't have ended like this if he had had half of your wits and temperament. Sally was silent. After a long time, she looked over and asked Helena, Are you really ready to let Wind Forest go through another revolution? I was initially, but now I'm afraid it's not going to be in time. Helena shook her head. She lifted her hand, and a video began to play in midair. This is... Sally's face was tight with shock. However, they actually made so much money instantly after reopening today. She had never seen so much money in front of her before. Eofi took out a dragon coin, and blew on it gently. She put it next to her ear to listen to the pleasing sound of money before she smilingly said, From now on, we will be earning this much every day. Our good days are coming. No one would think that having too much money was a problem, right? There's so much money. Where will we keep it? Mela asked. They only earned a few thousands copper coins a day in the past, and they could easily bring them upstairs. The money was only just enough for the tavern's operation. Now, they suddenly had such a huge amount of money, so it was already impossible for them to just bring it upstairs. The two of them had to make a few trips before they brought all the coins up. Furthermore, it didn't seem very safe to just keep the money in the room. After pondering, Eofi said, Let's put the money in the cellar first. We'll exchange it into Buffett Bank's banknotes after we amass 1,000,000 copper coins. All right. Mela picked up the box that was filled with dragon coins and gold coins, and prepared to move it into the cellar first. Bam, bam. Right then, heavy knocking suddenly sounded. Who's out there? Eofi and Mela were stunned for a moment, and they looked at the door. Bam! The wooden door that was enhanced by the magical screen was broken open. An ugly and ferocious big man leaped in with a huge axe, and sneered at Eofi and Mela. Who are you? What do you want to do? Mela shouted loudly. Run! Eofi looked at that big guy and went white. She grabbed Mela, and ran towards the back of the tavern. Mela lost her grip on the money box, and the dragon coins and gold coins scattered to the floor, making a din. Hee hee! Where are you going, ladies? Give me all the money and then let me have some fun. I won't kill you too. That strapping man strode over and chased after Eofi and Mela. All the tables and chairs were knocked out along his way. Eofi pulled Mela into the brewery, and pulled open the cella's door. She stuffed Mela in before jumping in herself. She used all her strength to pull the heavy cella's door downwards. At the moment the cella's door closed, she saw a gigantic axe lift up and then smash down. Bam! A dull thud echoed throughout the cellar. Eofi's hands were numb from the vibrations, and she quickly let go of the handle. Mela fell to the cella's floor in shock, and asked in a quivering voice, Miss? What does he want to do? Eofi looked at the defense spell formation that was triggered with a slight relief. She came down from the ladder and sat on the floor. She hugged Mela and patted her shoulders. Don't be afraid. The cellar is safe. He can't enter. Bam! 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 The dull knocking came from the cella's door. The defense spell formation began to blink, and soil began to fall from the cracks. Eofi hugged Mela with a solemn expression. She was pale too. Those memories that she had tossed to the back of her mind surged up again. It was still this cellar. Her father pushed her into this cellar with all his might, and then blocked the cellar with his body. That was the most horrifying scene she ever saw in her life. Her father was hacked to death by that assailant with an axe. His blood seeped through the cracks, and dripped into the dark cellar. Then, that assailant also crashed the cella's door crazily just like now. It went on for 10 odd minutes before he left in a puff. The young Eofi could only huddle in a corner and cry in fear, hoping that someone could open the cella's door and rescue her. 15 years had passed, and just as Titan Tavern was going to return to its glory, the same thing happened again. The protective shield's glow began to get dimmer, and the crashing sounds became louder and louder. Eofi hugged Mela. The fear that made her cold came all over her again. Unlike 15 years ago, she was no longer a child. There was a dim yellow light in the cellar, and Mela was in her arms. There was fear in Mela's eyes when she looked up at Eofi, and asked, Miss, is he trying to kill us? It'll be fine. Eofi hugged her even closer. She knew the man out there probably really came for them. The money was all out there. A good 170,000 copper coins. If he was here for the money, he could just take them and leave. However, he was still wasting his time and energy crashing the cellar. Obviously, his target was not just money, it was them as well. Eofi's heart turned ice cold when she thought she was going to end up in the hands of such a terrifying man. The two of them hugged each tightly, praying that someone could rush over when they heard the noises and scare the assailant away. However, there were no residents staying close to the tavern. It was so late in the night, she was afraid no one could hear the noises here. Eofi thought of Mr. Hades who lived across. However, she gave up on that thought after thinking about it. Although Mr. Hades was a very wise man, he wasn't a very strong man. Furthermore, he had 2 children and a beautiful wife. She absolutely didn't want him and his family to get hurt because of her. She knew very well that this assailant wouldn't care who appeared in the tavern. Amy, in her little bear pajamas, pulled open the curtains, looked at Titan Tavern that had its front door broken open, turned her head around, and said, "Father, seems like someone is making trouble in the tavern across." Mag, who was wearing a bathrobe, wiped his hair with a towel, and smilingly asked, "Yes. Seems like some bad guys have entered. Little Amy, do you want to beat up some bad guys?" He had just soaped himself when he noticed the noises from across. However, he was sure that Eofi had already entered the cellar, and the thug couldn't break through the magic shield in the cellar for the time being, and that was why he didn't rush to save her in the nude. Instead, he quickly showered and put on a bathrobe. Yet. Little Amy loves to beat up bad guys. Amy's eyes lit up, and she nodded repeatedly. She looked around her, picked up the little folding chair in the corner, and swung it around to test it before nodding in satisfaction, and said, "Let's go." Mag flicked a glance at the folding chair, and raised his eyebrows. The mother and daughter had similar tastes. "All right. Let's go." Mag put on a pair of slippers, pushed open the window, and jumped down from the second floor. Amy held the folding chair, and jumped down from the second floor too. The father and daughter duo in pajamas just sashayed into the Titan Tavern with broken doors. Chapter 2105 Crawl for Me. The strapping guy was laughing. This meant that the barrier couldn't hold for long. He would be able to smash open the cella's door soon, and then catch the two beauties inside. He felt even more energetic when he thought how that beautiful lady boss with her exquisite body and seductive looks would belong to him tonight and would be his to ravish. Damn magic caster! The giant guy spat and took a break. He lifted the axe over his head, and tensed up all his muscles. A black glow consolidated on the axe's blade, and then he brought it down hard. Crunch! With a crisp sound, cracks began to appear on the magical screen, and spread out rapidly before the screen finally crumbled. The axe landed on the cella's door without any obstruction. It was a solid thud, and cracks began to appear on the cella's door too. "It's working! Ha ha ha!" The strapping man laughed sinisterly, but he also couldn't help panting. However, the magical screen was already taken down by him, so the rest would be easy now. The woman in the cellar was much more precious than the gold coins on the floor. "Mela, go hide in the innermost cellar. No matter what happens, don't come out." Eofi stood up, and pushed Mela into the walkway. "No. Miss, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying with you. I'm not leaving you." Mela hugged Eofi's arm, shook her head, and cried, but the eyes on her fearful face were filled with conviction. The magical screen was already broken. Eofi knew very well that the scary assailant could enter very soon. Her limbs felt cold, and her heart was filled with dread. Why was this happening? She had already lost her parents 15 years ago. Was she going to lose her life in a similar way today? She was also clenching the handle of a short dagger that she hid on herself. If that fellow wanted to humiliate her, she wasn't going to let him do it. Perhaps, losing her life in the cellar that held her father's life work wasn't a bad place to leave this world. Or, perhaps she should have left this world 15 years ago. That way, at least Mela wouldn't have been trapped here with her. She was still a child. Eofi looked at Mela with an aching heart. The strapping guy lifted the huge axe again and panted hard. He should be able to deal with this horrible cella's door after this strike of the axe. "It must be tiring after all this physical work," a voice suddenly spoke up behind him. "Yes. It's so tiring." The giant guy nodded. Then, he glared and turned around to look behind him. There were a young man and a little girl standing behind him. One of them was leaning against the door frame, while the other was sitting on a little chair. They looked like they were watching a good show, and seemed to have been here for a long time. The bulky guy was shocked, and he turned around to yell at Mag, "Who are you?" "We are the neighbors. We live right across the street. We came to check because there were knocking sounds in the middle of the night." "Did Miss Eofi get the construction team to change the door and clean up the cellar?" Mag answered with a chuckle. "Oh. You're the neighbors." The bulky guy put down the axe slowly. A silly smile appeared on his ferocious face. He sized up Mag, making sure that he was just a weak and ordinary man before he walked slowly towards Mag with the axe. Yes. We were already prepared to go to bed when you woke us up. Amy looked at that big guy with a pout. You're really a terrible big fellow. Mela suddenly pointed upwards, and exclaimed happily, Listen, miss. It's Mr. Hades' voice. Eofi, who was already waiting for the assailant to strike the last time, looked up suddenly too. Her heart was filled with hope. However, she soon heard Amy's voice, and panic appeared on her face again. She looked up, and called out with her loudest voice. Run! Mr. Hades! He's a thug! Eofi's voice could be heard from the cellar. Mag looked at that big guy, and smilingly asked, Is it so? Hee hee. She's right. You've to pay the price for being a busybody. The silly smile on the big guy's face disappeared. All the flesh on his face squeezed together, and he lifted the giant axe up with a sinister smile. He swung the axe at Mag, and yelled, Die! Bam! A dull thud. The big guy with the axe flew backwards, and then got stuck to the wall. His eyes widened with disbelief. Amy held that little folding chair, and said to that big guy childishly, Crawl for me. Look at you. Why are you so careless? Mag took 2 steps forward, and smilingly looked at the big guy, who was trying to extricate himself out of the wall. I'm going to kill you guys. Although the big guy was shocked, he was also furious. He dashed towards Amy, grabbing the axe with both hands. Black glow glistened on the axe, and he wasn't holding back anymore. Bam! Another dull thud of the folding chair hitting the face. The big guy flew out again. Lying on the floor, even the 3 red horizontal lines across his face couldn't hide his shock and desperation. Yes, he was sent flying by a little girl who seemed to be only 4 years old. Furthermore, it was done by a folding chair twice. Such an incident was just like a nightmare. Mag looked at the dragon coins and gold coins scattered on the floor, and went forward with a smile. He stepped on that big guy's hand that was holding the axe's handle again. The fingers that looked like iron rods were squashed instantly, and stuck to the axe's handle like goo. Ah! The big guy let out a horrible scream, and his face turned white instantly. Beads of sweat emerged on his forehead. Say it! Who sent you here? Mag looked down at the big guy, and smilingly said, If you don't want your other hand to become like that, better not try any tricks. No one sent me. I came by myself. I knew they earned a lot of money today. I need money, the big guy roared in a low voice as he stared at Mag with bloodshot eyes. I know you need money, but you don't need the money on the floor. Mag went to the other side, and then stepped onto his other hand. He gradually stepped harder as he smilingly asked, So, who promised to give you more money to deal with Lady Boss Eofi? The big guy watched his left fingers slowly distort under Mag's foot with horror. His joints began to make cracking sounds, and the heart-wrenching pain came again. He knew Mag wasn't scaring him. He would really crush his fingers. Black market. It's a black market assignment, the big guy shouted out in fright. Splat! His left hand was crushed too. Oops, sorry. I thought you would be tougher. Mag looked at the screaming big guy apologetically. Mag wiped the bottom of his soul against him when he retracted his foot. Chapter 2106 Don't we have someone here? Mela, I have to go out. I can't let anything untoward happen to Mr. Hades because of me. But, young mistress, Miss grabbed Eofi's sleeve. If something happened to Mr. Hades's family because of me, my soul would never be forgiven, Eofi told Mela. Let me go with you then, Mela said with resolution as she let Eofi go. Eofi held a dagger, and climbed up the stairs. She turned the lock on the cellar door, and pushed it open with all her might. As the cellar door opened slowly, the terrible cries became even more distinct. Eofi's and Mela's face were slightly pale, but they still opened the cellar door outward with all their might. Eofi jumped out of the cellar, and shouted loudly, "I'm here, don't you?" After that, her eyes widened immediately as she looked, in disbelief, at the man lying on the floor and crying loudly, as well as Mag, who had one foot on the man's private area, and Amy, who was sitting on a little stool. Splat! It was the sound of balls being crushed. "Ah! I'm sorry, I was nervous." Mag retracted his foot, and took half a step back as he apologized. "Ah!" the man shrieked. His eyeballs protruded, and he was in so much pain he almost passed out. Mela jumped out from the cellar as well, holding a bottle of wine in her hand, and looking as though she was ready to fight it out. Then she happened to witness the scene. Smash! The bottle landed on the floor, breaking into a million pieces. "Miss Eofi, Mela, are you all right?" Mag asked as she looked at Eofi with a smile. "Why, yes." Eofi tried her best to look away from the assailant lying on the floor with 3 red streaks across his face, hands that were utterly disfigured, and something at his groin area that seemed to have been smashed. "Mr. Hades, you," Eofi wanted to ask if they were okay, but it seemed the situation was not what she thought it to be. The assailant that was so ferocious he could destroy a 5th-tier magic caster's shield met Hades and his daughter, but ended up in this terrible state. That was really unbelievable. We were about to go to sleep when we heard something strange here, so we've decided to come over to take a look. We didn't expect to see this giant fool mutilating himself and even smashing his own hand. It was an urgent situation, so I used a special way to calm him down." Mag looked at Eofi with a smile, and said, "If I said that, you would believe me, right?" Eofi saw the warm smile on Mag's face, and felt her startled heart being soothed. She had not felt such sense of security in years. For all these years, she had never thought of finding a man for herself to depend on. She'd rather make the cellar sturdier than find herself a man. However, at that instance, she suddenly thought that if Mr. Hades had been right by their side tonight, she probably would not have had to hide in the cellar, right? "I will." Eofi nodded. "Boo-hoo!" The man, who was lying on the floor, glared at Mag, as though he was about to say something that had to do with his dignity. The situation might be a little complicated, but this giant fool even revealed some information to me to thank me for stopping his self-mutilation. Mag nodded, and said, "Do you have any archenemies? The kind that would pay to have you killed on the black market?" "Pay to have me killed on the black market?" Eofi's expression changed slightly. She glanced at the assailant. If she was not wrong, this fellow was not here just for money. "I don't suppose I have any archenemies. Titan Tavern's business hadn't been good all these years, so it would not be jealousy from someone in the same field." Eofi shook her head. "Yes. Our young mistress and neighbors have a very good relationship. They've never gotten into a fight." Mela nodded in agreement. "I see." Mag fell silent. He looked at the man on the ground again. "Dear sir, when did you take this mission from the black market?" "Tell me the details," Mag asked with a chuckle, but his foot was already on the man's arm. "Don't step." "I'll tell. I'll say everything," the man shouted quickly, afraid that another accident would happen again. "This was a mission that just came out on the black market yesterday. The requirement was to rob the owner of Titan Tavern, and then burn down the cellar and tavern. The reward was 1 million copper coins. The employer would verify the result on his own. When the deed was done, I'd be able to receive half the reward, and the employer would leave an address through the black market for the collection of the other half of the reward." The man quickly finished his piece. After that, Mag stepped on his arm. "You're so despicable to treat 2 unarmed women." Mag retracted his foot, and looked at the crying man in disdain. **CK, the man cursed. However, after just starting to curse, a foldable chair came flying at his face. "You need to have some substance. No cursing, Amy said as she lifted a chair in one hand. Eofi looked at the man's face, which had become a tic-tac-toe board, then at Amy, and was utterly confused. She said the most civilized thing, but did the most savage deed. The man's face turned red as he swallowed his words without a hint of temper. It's obvious that the mastermind is after Miss Eofi and the Titan liquor stored in the cellar, Miss told Eofi. It was a new mission that came out yesterday with a high reward and clear goal, but the mission did not specifically point to anyone. Besides, the mastermind was very cautious. He sent the mission out in the black market, and did not have any direct contact with the assailant. Even the reward was transacted through the black market. Who could it be? We just took the gold award back yesterday. Eofi frowned in bewilderment. Actually, it's easy to seek the mastermind out. Just complete the mission and hand you over to him. That way, we would know who was orchestrating all this at the back, Mag said with a smile. Mr. Hades, what you mean is, burn the cellar and tavern, and then hand me over to the mastermind. Eofi looked at Mag as her expression changed. It's 1 million copper coins, that's a lot of money. Amy sat at the side again as she counted on her fingers. Mag looked at the nervous Eofi and Mela, and quickly shook his head. He said smilingly, "Don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is we can put up a show to meet that mastermind. Of course, we can't burn the tavern or the cellar. But what should we do then?" Eofi furrowed her brows. "Don't we have someone here?" Mag smiled and squatted beside the man. He patted the man's shoulder, and said, "Am I right?" Chapter 2107 Is your wife not at home? The revenue of that day was robbed, and Eofi and her servant, Mela, disappeared. What was left was a pool of blood and a heap of mess. It was said that the place was even set on fire, but the kind new neighbor, Mr. Hades, found out in time and put out the fire, therefore reducing the amount of losses. The next morning, this incident had spread to all taverns on Romo Street and then in Rodu. Everyone could not help but discuss it. "I can't believe something like this actually happened to Boss Eofi. Life is really unfair. Yet, Miss Eofi is such a great person. How could this happen to her? Let us pray for Miss Eofi. Hope she's fine. Does that mean Titan Tavern will disappear just like that?" The neighbors had gathered to take a look at the scene that had been sealed off by the military. They all had a grave expression. "Did you sleep well last night?" Mag asked Eofi with a smile as he scooped up some porridge when he saw her coming down the stairs. I slept very well." Eofi nodded. She was surprised that she could actually fall asleep the moment she lay on the bed, and it was an undisturbed sleep until morning. She had never slept so well in a long time. "The bed is very comfortable. Thank you very much for last night," Eofi said sincerely with a deep bow when she walked over to Mag. "You're welcome. As neighbors, we should help each other." Mag shook his head. Thankfully, his wife was not home. Otherwise, if taken out of context, their conversation might lead to a misunderstanding. Eofi also realized what she said sounded a little strange, and she blushed. However, she quickly smelled the strong fragrance, and looked at the bowl in Mag's hand as she said, "It smells so good. Did you make this porridge?" At the same time, her stomach grumbled. "Yes. I made some porridge in the morning and also a few soup dumplings." Miss nodded. He turned off the stove for the bamboo steamer, and said, "If you're hungry, you can have some porridge. I'll wake the children up." "It's all right. I'm not grumble." Eofi still lost to her stomach, and received the bowl of porridge Mag passed to her. The warm bowl was as settling as his hands, and that made Eofi's heart flutter. "Oh, right, is your wife not at home?" Eofi asked curiously. So much happened yesterday, and Mag even brought her and Mela back home, but she did not see his wife at all. "Oh, she went back to her parents' house. I think she will be returning today." Mag gave a casual reply, took off his apron, and went upstairs. Eofi looked at Mag's back, and could not help but think to herself, Mr. Hades is such a nice man. He can make such a delicious breakfast even when he has to take care of his children alone. I really envy his wife. Mag came down very quickly to Eofi, who was sipping on the porridge, and said, "Oh, right. The neighbors are all praying for you in front of your tavern, so I think you and Mela should just stay upstairs and not show yourselves. Vas, I am going to the court to get my statement recorded in a while. After that, I will be going to the black market to contact the person who gave the mission." Eofi did not expect Mag to come down so quickly. She placed her spoon down immediately, and nodded as she licked her lips. Him. Mag looked at her and smiled as he pointed to the corner of her lips. Porridge. Eofi quickly licked the corner of her mouth and blushed. Is the food to your liking? Mag asked as he sat in front of her. Him. Your porridge is the best I've ever tasted. Eofi nodded. These were her heartfelt words. She hadn't tasted such delicious porridge before. The mysterious translucent and chewy ingredient as well as the tender lean meat and the smooth texture completely soothed her soul. Very quickly, Amy and Annie came downstairs. Wow, are we having soup dumplings for breakfast today? My favorite. Amy's eyes lit up when she saw the bamboo steamer stacked up high. Young mistress. Mela sat beside Eofi as she rubbed her sleepy eyes. However, she quickly got up again and greeted Mag. Mag brought the soup dumplings over. He did not have to say anything, and Amy was already teaching Eofi and Mela how to pick the soup dumpling up and how to eat it. Eofi and Mela looked at Amy in shock. The meaty fragrance of the dumpling wafted in the air. When they watched the little one drink the soup, they could not help but swallow their saliva. Did you make this exquisite dumpling too, Mr. Hades? Eofi looked at Mag, who was sitting opposite her, in disbelief. Yes. I'm not sure if it would be to your liking. Mag nodded and took a soup dumpling for himself. Eofi picked up the soup dumpling like them. The thin dumpling skin was filled with soup. When she picked it up, the dumpling swayed from side to side, as though it would explode any moment. Eofi put the dumpling on her plate carefully, and heaved a sigh of relief. This soup dumpling is amazing. How did Mr. Hades wrap the soup so perfectly within such a thin layer of dumpling skin? After that, Eofi copied Amy, and bit a hole open in the dumpling. The soup gushed out immediately, and she quickly put her mouth over the hole and took a sip. Hot. The soup in the dumpling, which was just taken off the stove, was still piping hot. However, when the soup gushed into her mouth, her attention was all on the soup itself. It was intoxicatingly fresh, and that totally dispelled the stinging pain from its heat. Oh! This is a remarkable taste. It's an indescribable feeling. Eofi raised her beautiful brow. Compared to the porridge, this soup was intrusive and irresistible. When she was almost done with the soup, Eofi lifted her head up and licked her lips, wanting more. After that, she picked up the deflated dumpling with her chopsticks, and took a bite. The dumpling skin was chewy, and the meat filling, which was submerged in soup, was fatty but not greasy. The texture was smooth, and it was another remarkable experience. This is delicious. Eofi put her chopsticks down, and looked at Mag as she exclaimed, "Your culinary skills are amazing." Yes. She was starting to get jealous of Irina. The latter could marry such a gentle and meticulous man who was so good at cooking. How enviable! So good! Too good! I'm going to cry. Mela held her bowl in both hands. She had already licked the soup cleanly, and her eyes were glimmering. Have some more. There's enough. Mag put another dumpling in Mela's bowl. This young maiden is rather honest. After breakfast, Eofi and Mela volunteered to do the dishes, so Mag went straight out. However, the moment he opened the door, the neighbors all swarmed over. "Boss Hades, what happened last night?" There were people at court from the Ministry of Law who drank often in Saipan Tavern recently, so they recognized Mag. As Mag was related to Duke Abraham, they did not make things difficult for him, and even commended him after recording the statement. Boss Hades, if you have any news of this case today, please contact us immediately, the staff member reminded Mag after walking him to the door before saying, also, do be careful. I will. Thank you. Mag nodded and left. The assailant was still locked up in his attic. Mag had gotten some news about the black market from the assailant last night. After walking past 5 streets and turning into an alley, Mag had already changed into a large, burly man with a mustache. This was a makeup that he put thought into, codenamed Kabaz. Kabaz was a ruthless character in the black market, but a pity he stuttered, so he was not a man of many words. Before going to the black market, Mag found another 2 information centers to buy some information about the black market. The black market was a secret organization in the underground world of Rodu. People would do secret transactions here, dealing in slaves, lives, elves. As long as you had the money, the black market could satisfy all your needs. This black market was not only famous in Rodu, but the entire Norland continent. It was said that the black market had a secret relation to the royal family of the Roth Empire. Therefore, its status in Rodu's underground world had always been stable throughout all these years. This large underground organization did not have a big headquarters. Instead, their headquarters were spread all over different areas in Rodu. Those with the black market tablet would be allowed to enter the headquarters, and could request the black market launch a mission, or accept the missions launched by others. To be safe, Mag did not use the tablet of the man from last night. Instead, he bought a new tablet from the information center, which was equivalent to obtaining a new identity in the underground world. Anyone could accept the missions in the black market, and there were no restrictions. They only cared about the result and the reward. This was no doubt good news to Mag. Mag went to the closest black market contact point. It was a rather run-down house. After showing his tablet and entering, Mag collected a broken mask and wore it. After that, he followed a chap clad in a black robe, and entered an underground tunnel. After walking through the long tunnel, a spacious hall appeared. There were quite a lot of people in the hall, and they appeared rather ferocious. They had obvious physical characteristics, so the masks on their faces were just for show. Those who roamed the world would more or less wish they could gain some fame, so they would always dress up in a peculiar way so that they could be recognized the moment they appeared. For example, Mag's attention was immediately drawn to the lady in front with a large sunflower on her shoulder. Mag was thinking if the sunflower seeds would be bigger than walnuts. On the wall at the side, there was a list of missions written by hand. The people in the hall were all looking at the missions while considering which one they should take up. There was a wooden plaque beside each mission. Taking the wooden plaque would mean that you accepted the mission. There was only one mission slot in each contact point. Therefore, when a high-reward mission appeared, a fight breaking out for the mission would be quite common. Mag went over to glance at the missions. There were many strange missions. Killing someone took up around a third of the list, and there were other requests, such as to buy the pups of magic beasts, elf maids, succubus ladies, goblin lolitas. Wait, the one who posted the last one had a rather peculiar taste? Mag looked away, and went to the mission exchange hall at the side. He raised the black curtain, and a tunnel appeared. There were 2 men in black robes standing in front of the tunnel. They reached out to stop Mag. Mag pulled out a black tablet from his pocket, and threw it over. One of the men in black robes checked the tablet and nodded. He returned the tablet and stepped aside, indicating that Mag could pass. The end of the tunnel was a black metal door. Mag walked to the door, and it started opening inward slowly. Inside were a window, a wall, and a hole the size of a head. It was pitch black behind the hole, and there was a wooden stool placed in front of the window. Brave mercenary! What mission have you completed? A hoarse voice came from behind the wall. Kidnapped a woman. Mag took a seat on the wooden stool, and threw that tablet into that black hole. He looked as if he did not care, but was actually carefully observing the hole. A working place could not be in complete darkness, of course. That was just a very high-level illusion. All right. Please hold on. We have to check. The hoarse voice sounded before silence fell. About 15 minutes later, the hoarse voice sounded again. Apologies for the wait. After checking, we've ascertained that the owner of Titan Tavern was indeed captured. It seems she's in your hands. But this is just part of the mission. A pity you did not complete the mission of burning the cellar and tavern down. According to the rules, you can only get half the reward. I did light them on fire, Mag spat out. Oh, you did set it on fire, but it was put out by the owner of the tavern in front. If there is a need, you can always launch a revenge mission, the voice said in a rather light-hearted way. It's okay. Mag raised his brow. This black market is really good at making business. This is the deposit of 250,000 and the time and location of the transaction. We will inform the owner. However, we cannot guarantee that you will be able to receive the rest of your reward. A black money pouch and a piece of paper appeared from the black hole. All right. Mag picked up the heavy money pouch and paper, and left. After leaving the black market, Mag found an alley to check the money pouch. It was all golden dragon coins inside. 250 of them in total. After that, he unfolded the piece of paper. On it were the words, "Run-down house with tiled roof at the end of Tulu Alley in the west of the city." Mag kept the paper, kept his disguise, and stopped a horse-drawn carriage at the alley. He went straight to Tulu Alley in the west of the city. It's almost impossible to see anyone here, but there is quite a lot of scum. "What are you doing here, sir?" the coachman asked as he glanced at the run-down alley after he took Mag's money. "Here to meet a friend." Mag jumped down the horse-drawn carriage with a smile, and watched it drive off. After that, he walked leisurely towards Tulu Alley that was 3 streets down. The western side of Rodo was slums, and the vicinity of Tulu Alley was even more deserted. The sides of the streets were run down and filled with houses falling apart. Weeds were growing by the side of the road, and it was almost impossible to see a human. To be able to find such a deserted place in Rodo showed that this was not the first day the other party had thought of it. Mag flipped over a few courtyard walls, and came to Tulu Alley. He stood outside, and did not walk in straight away. "No one?" Mag stood outside for a while with a puzzled look. "Interesting. It seems we still have to act it all out to lure the snake out of the hole." Chapter 2109 Did you get the thrill of combat? Mag felt a little guilty, but the ambience between the two people sitting across from each other seemed better than he had anticipated. "Did you find the person?" Irina asked. It seemed like Iafi had already explained last night's incident to Irina. Mag shook his head, and said, "No. The other party is very cunning. I got the location, but there was no one there. There should be someone keeping watch. They would only appear when Miss Iafi shows up." "Did Mr. Hades go to look for the perpetrator alone?" Iafi was slightly taken aback. She thought Mag had only gone to give his statement at the court in the morning. "Yes. To find the perpetrator hiding behind the scene, we need to put on a show. Miss Iafi, you will have to come with me to lure the person out." Mag nodded. "But, will it be too dangerous?" Iafi was a little worried. She didn't want Mr. Hades and his family to put themselves at risk for her again. "It's fine. I'm going to." Irina put down her teacup with a cold expression, and said, "I despise holes who attack women the most." Iafi looked at the righteous Irina, and felt touched and ashamed at the same time. Irina was seeking justice for her, yet Iafi was lusting after her husband. She was really too cheap. I'm going to. Amy quickly put up her hand and took part with enthusiasm. All right. You guys prepare yourselves while I go get a horse-drawn carriage. We'll leave from the backyard later. Mag nodded and whispered to Irina before leaving through the back door. Soon after, a worn-out horse-drawn carriage stopped at the Saipan Tavern's backyard for a moment before slowly driving away, and heading to the west of the city. Eofi sat in the carriage. Looking at Irina and Amy sitting across from her, she asked, "Do we need to inform the court? Will it be dangerous if we go there?" Amy nodded, and said, "It's really dangerous for the bad guys if we go there. I've already informed the court. They should be arriving soon to arrest the thugs, and this issue will be considered over," Mag answered outside the carriage. "That will be good." Eofi heaved a breath of relief slightly. The carriage soon reached the west of the city. It drove into a deserted alley among mud buildings, and stopped at the end of the alley. Mag, who had put on a disguise, went into the cabin, and came out with Eofi, who was tied up. He kicked open the wooden door and walked in. Mag searched for a house that was still rather intact, and put Eofi down. He found a worn-out chair from the corner, and let her sit down. He said in a low voice, "We may have to wait for a while, but don't worry, Miss Eofi. I'll protect you." "Yes." Eofi twisted her body, which was completely bundled up awkwardly. She blushed a little, and was a little excited for no reason. Mag flicked a glance at Eofi, who was tied up in the tortoise-shell bondage, and his eyelids twitched. He wondered where Irina learned it from. Speaking about it, it really looked quite good. "What if no one comes?" Eofi asked. "The other party's number one target is you. He wouldn't have gone through so much effort if he had not wanted to come." Mag shook his head with a smile, and seriously instructed Eofi, "However, Miss Eofi, you must use the words I taught you earlier to handle the people from the court when they arrive later." "Yes. I remember it. I will not get you and your family involved, Mr. Hades." Eofi nodded gravely. "All right. Let's wait here for a while and see who's the person behind all this." Mag also stopped talking, and watched from the side quietly. "Boss, they're here." In a wooden three-story building's attic not far away from the mud houses alley, a man in a black robe spoke to a figure standing near the window. "The woman." That person spoke up. "She's here too. Go bring her over." "You know what to do if it's a trap, right?" that man said in a low voice. A conflicted expression appeared on the man's face, but he still took out a pill, and put it into his mouth. "Go," that man instructed. The man in black robe went downstairs and left. The person in front of the window turned around slowly. It was the boss of Reese Tavern, Boris. Mag and Eofi didn't wait for too long. 5 men in black robes went into the dilapidated yard, and went straight for the house that Mag and Eofi were in. Eofi had a panicked look, and she instinctively looked up at Mag standing at the side. The leading man in black robe looked at Eofi, who was tied up, and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. He lifted his hand at Mag, and tossed a black money bag over. He said in a grave voice, "The remaining 250,000 copper coins of the payment. You may leave now." Mag weighed the money bag in his hands before attaching it to his waist, but he was still standing there, and smilingly said to that man in black robe, "I'm very curious. Who is the person that is willing to spend so much money to abduct this woman? Rules of the black market. Just take the money and do the job. Don't ask so many questions," the man in black robe shouted coldly. He looked at Mag with an unfriendly gaze. "Don't regret it if you want to spoil the rules of the black market." The other 4 black-robed men grasped the weapons at their waists and slowly gathered around Mag. "Rules." Mag laughed and kicked off the floor. A giant axe flew up and landed on his hand. "I always follow the rules. No one can touch my people. That's my rule. Get rid of him, and this 250,000 will belong to us." The man in black robe waved his hand, and the other 4 of them drew their weapons and dashed towards Mag. Mag raised his eyebrows. This scene was equivalent to a bunch of noobs rushing towards a king. It was admirable. So, he used the axe, and dispatched this group of 3rd tier and 4th tier knights. The eyes of the leading man in black robe widened when he saw that. He took out 3 light yellow balls, and threw them on the ground before running out. 3 thunder balls exploded on the floor, and a few puffs of smoke rose up. That black-robed man got out of the house in the blink of an eye. He bumped into a big guy over 2 meters tall at the door. The man in black robe was alarmed, but his reflexes were still fast. He swung his long sword, and cut off the giant guy's arm. The man in black robe was stunned. He didn't expect himself to be so valorous. However, although the big guy lost an arm, he still pounced over heroically. The man in black robe quickly swung his sword again, and sliced off the other arm of the big guy. He also gave him a stab at the heart before kicking him over. Tui! The man in black robe spat. This was the most enjoyable battle in his life. Did you get the thrill of combat? A voice spoke up at the side. The man in black robe was about to nod when he went white. He saw the giant axe that came right into his face as soon as he turned around. He was cut into 2 by the axe. It was so cruel that Mag didn't even dare to turn and look. Chapter 2110 Are you teaching me how to do things? The sounds of door breaking and footsteps could be heard out there. Someone is here to wash the floor. I'll need to go first. You just do as we agreed upon earlier, Mag said to Iafi before leaping down through the window, and left. She's over here. Be careful. Listen up. You are already surrounded. The people from the court made some threats out there first. They finally entered the room after 15 minutes when the smoke went away, and rescued the innocent civilian, Miss Iafi. Oh no. We've been tricked. In the attic, Boris looked at the unusual movements in the yard, and went white. It's indeed rather bad, a cold voice spoke up behind him. Boris turned around, and saw that a pretty woman and a pretty little girl appeared in the attic all of a sudden. Who are you guys? Boris said in a shock. His hand grabbed the dagger at his waist quietly. Since you ask sincerely, we'll let you know out of kindness. Preventing the world from being destroyed, protecting the world's peace, upholding love and punishing evil, the cute and mesmerizing Amy is me. Amy held a little folding chair, and spoke prim and proper. What? Boris glared. Bam! The folding chair hit his face. Violent strike *10,0001. What's happening? Amy looked at Boris on the ground, and shook her head. Father said we have to be civilized. Boris slumped on the floor with wide eyes. He felt that he was hurt and lost 10,000 points too. All right, you'll be admitting it if you keep quiet. Amy nodded. Boris tried to get up by pressing both his hands on the floor. Although he looked panicked, he still said to Irina, I'm Boris. Let me go, and I can give you a lot of money. You have a lot of money? Irina asked. As if he had found a lifeline, Boris nodded, and said, yes. I've a lot of money. A lot of money. All right. We'll go get it for ourselves later. Irina nodded calmly. Hey! Boris gaped. Bam! He was slammed to the floor again. I'm not scolding you, Boris was furious and aggrieved. Amy tilted her head, and asked him, are you teaching me how to do things? I didn't, Boris felt like crying. Who are you guys exactly? Why are you doing this? Boris said angrily. He was trapped by a woman and a child. He felt so humiliated. Mag's voice and footsteps could be heard coming from downstairs. Boss Boris is so forgetful. Didn't we just meet at the liquor tasting event 2 days ago? You've already forgotten about us. It's you. Boris saw Mag appear at the staircase, and his eyes flicked open with disbelief. Yes. Are you shocked? Mag saw the bloody scratches on Boris's face, and patted Amy's head with a smile. Boris was extremely shocked. He had never expected that it was Mag who had thwarted his plans. How many things did this young man, who looked so ordinary, and only knew how to brew liquor, do behind the scenes? Mr. Hades, please let me go. Name your terms, and I will satisfy all your wishes as long as you let me leave here safely. Boris pleaded with Mag sincerely. I want to get rid of the Great Old One, Thulhu. What? I want to destroy the army of the dead without any casualty. Hey! I want to get rid of Andrei Edward and his 2 sons. Hey! See, you can't even satisfy any one of my wishes. Aren't you sprouting nonsense? Mag pursed his lips, and gave Boris a slap. Damn it, Boris broke into tears right on the spot. Why? Why do you need to interfere? Your tavern's business will only be better after Titan Tavern collapses. This is a good thing for you. Boris looked at Mag desperately. I'm sorry. Not everyone is as despicable as you. Mag shook his head before crouching down, and looked at him with a smirk. Moreover, do you know that I have bought up half of Romo Street? Half. I made my money by speculating on properties. A-hole. Boris looked at Mag in a daze. He couldn't seem to walk from the shadow of his failure. Let me ask you one last question. Did you have anything to do with Eofi's parents' murder back then? Mag asked. Boris was stunned for a minute before he suddenly burst out in laughter. He stared at Mag with a ferocious expression, and said, Do you want to know? Let me go, and I'll tell you. Otherwise, you won't know for the rest of your life. Ha 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 gulp. Boris's laughter ceased suddenly. He grasped his throat, and glared at Mag with fear. What did you feed me? I got it from your subordinate. I've removed the wax on the exterior. The effect should be better, Mag said with a smile. Boris's face turned dark rapidly. He used his finger to dig down his throat, attempting to struggle fruitlessly. Furthermore, your expressions have already told me that Eofi's parents simply happened to meet lousy people. It had nothing to do with you, Mag calmly said. Boris stared at Mag with wide eyes. Finally, his legs twitched twice, and he stopped breathing. Mag covered Amy's eyes, and said to Irina, Can we remove the bloody scratches on his face, and make him look like he died more naturally? Irina waved her hand, and the scratches left by the folding chair on Boris's face disappeared. Let's go. We should go collect some payment. Mag stomped his foot, and this building that had been deserted for years collapsed. Boris's corpse happened to roll onto the street. Meanwhile, Mag and his family disappeared with a flash of golden light. Miss Eofi, who was rescued, cried and narrated her ordeal, which was heartbreaking. A dainty lady like her had actually gone through such an ordeal. It made people's hearts ache for her. The people from the court couldn't even bear to let her see the tragic scene out there. After asking her some questions briefly after bringing her out of the yard, they sent her home right away. Chief. A building in the next block suddenly collapsed, and someone seems to be buried underneath it. A constable jogged into the yard quickly. What a coincidence! Let's go and take a look. They quickly rushed over. Isn't this Boss Boris of Reese Tavern? What is he doing here? Someone quickly recognized Boris. He committed suicide by ingesting poison. The corpse is still warm. He has just died. The officer in charge let go of Boris's hand, and stood up to look at the half-collapsed 3-story mud house. Then, he looked towards that previous yard, and his eyes lit up. I got it now. No idea what this asterisk is supposed to stand for. Doesn't seem to be multiplication. Probably damage the attack inflicted. Maybe it's some reference to a game or something. Same thing. Probably it means he lost 10,000 hit points like Indiana Games. To put it bluntly. They went there to wash the floor. However, there was one more culprit on the loose. On top of that, just before the people from court sealed Boris's mansion, his treasury was robbed. The savings of Rodu's wealthiest tavern owner were wiped clean. According to insiders' information, the amount at stake was a few $100 million. It seems poverty would limit one's imagination. Mag looked at the $3 billion worth of cash in the house that was being counted, and lamented to himself. Father, are all baddies so rich? Amy looked at Mag with glowing eyes, as though she had found the secret to wealth. Rich people are not necessarily bad people, but baddies are all pretty rich, Mag said with a smile. In that case, if you want to beat up baddies, you have to bring me along, Amy said seriously. All right, Mag agreed. There was no issue bringing Amy along to settle these punks. Annie sat in the corner alone, drawing and extremely indifferent to such material stuff. Ugly Duckling lay on the counter as it looked into the kitchen from time to time, thinking about its lunch that was already late for half an hour. Knock, knock. There came the sound of knocking. Irina waved her hand, and kept the gold and treasures. I'll open the door. Amy skipped to the door and opened it. Standing outside were Yafi and Mela, with many things in their hands. This is for you, Yafi passed a basket filled with snacks to Amy. Wow, so many goodies. Amy's eyes lit up. She received the basket, and bit onto the candied haw. After that, she thanked Yafi with her mouth full. Thank you, big sister Yafi. Yafi walked in, and took a bolt of blue satin from Mela. She stepped forward with a smile, and said to Irina, Big sister, this is top-grade glazed satin. You have a great figure, and would definitely look good in a dress made from this. Thank you. Irina received the satin. She liked it quite a bit. Although she had received the satin, Irina still took a few more glances at Yafi. The latter sounded so warm and passionate, but who knew if she had other motives? I heard that Annie liked drawing. I've also collected a few picture books, so I brought them over to see if Annie would like them. As she said that, Yafi started looking around in her canvas bag. Picture book. Mag raised his brow. He was suddenly a little nervous. His hardcover The Plum in the Golden Vase flew into Yafi's window. It was top-notch in terms of quality. However, it was too realistic, and was not suitable for little children. Besides, Irina and the others might not know Mandarin, but they all thought that Mag was the only one who recognized this dialect. If Yafi took out The Plum in the Golden Vase, he would have to get a hard beating. Recalling that Irina had already mastered knot tying that he once used on Camilla, Mag felt a chill down his spine. Just when Mag's heart was in his mouth, and he was thinking if he should bet on it with his life to create an accident, Yafi pulled out a few children's coloring books. She does have some eye for art, and knows that she should keep good things for herself. Mag heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. Annie received the coloring book happily. It was obvious that she loved such exquisite coloring books. You must have spent a lot of money. Thank you. Mag was clear how much such exquisite coloring books would cost. If it was from a famous artist, its price would be no less than 10,000 copper coins. It's fine as long as the children like it. Yafi smiled reservedly. These little gifts were nothing compared to what Mr. Hades and his family did to save their lives. After receiving the gifts, just when Mag was still wondering what else Yafi would be giving, she pulled out a check from her pocket. I heard that my life was worth 1 million copper coins in the black market. Mr. Hades, you saved me. Take this sum of money as my thank you gift to you. Yafi passed the check to Mag. I can't accept this money. Mag quickly waved his hands to reject. He had already received too much. These 1 million copper coins were leveraged on 3 billion. You must accept this money. Otherwise, I would feel bad. Yafi did not take her check back. She looked at Mag with resolution. I'll accept this money on his behalf. Stay back a while for lunch. We've not eaten yet. Just when Mag was thinking of how to reject Eofi, Irina had already taken the check. Sure. Eofi quickly blushed, and said embarrassedly, I'm here to have a free meal again. I feel very bad. It was mainly because Mr. Hades's cooking was too delicious, and her body was very honest. It's all right. The more, the merrier, Amy said with a smile. Besides, Father can make a few more dishes. Seeing that Irina had received the money, Mag did not speak further. He walked into the kitchen, and said, take a seat and wait for a bit more. I'll cook. In no time at all, Mag made a table full of sumptuous food for lunch. Eofi's and Mala's jaw dropped. They could not help but swallow their saliva when they saw the piping hot and fragrant dishes. Is this the legendary eggplant with garlic sauce? Eofi asked as she pointed to a dish. Yes. You know it. Mag was shocked. Mr. Hades, did you also read Perfect Food magazine and learn it on your own? Eofi looked at Mag in shock. It looks exactly the same as in the picture. You're too good at this. Oh, yeah, I learned it from the magazine. Mag nodded with a smile. He almost forgot about that. However, Eofi managed to come up with a perfect cover-up story for him. Do you like this dish? Mag asked. I saw the magazine 2 days ago, and was even thinking about it in my dreams. It's a pity Chaos City is too far away, and I can't really leave now. Otherwise, I would definitely want to try Mr. Mag's cooking for myself. Eofi nodded with longing in her eyes. You're lucky, then. Father makes really good eggplant with garlic sauce. It's nowhere worse than Mr. Mag's, Amy said with a wink. Really? In that case, I must give it a try. Eofi picked up her chopsticks, took a piece of eggplant, and blew on it. After that, she put it into her mouth. Sour, spicy, sweet, and savory, the 4 tastes exploded almost simultaneously in her mouth. Her taste buds were triggered instantly without warning. It felt as though something was rushing right up her head. Each taste was so prominent, but they actually blended together in such harmony. It made one fall deeply into it without knowing. The soft eggplant melted almost immediately in Eofi's mouth. After the wild palate feast experienced by her taste buds, Eofi swallowed it, and there was a lingering fragrance in her mouth. Hing! Eofi opened her red lips slightly, and could not help but let out a soft moan. It had way exceeded her imagination. It was already on another level. Even words were not enough to describe it. Her tongue had experienced the wildness, but it was still unsatisfied. Eofi opened her eyes, her face slightly flushed. She glanced at Mag, and actually felt an inexplicable affection. She lowered her head, and ate a few mouthfuls of rice. She chewed on the sweet and fragrant rice, and put another piece of eggplant into her mouth. If she admired Mag for his wine brewing skills before, and was grateful to him for saving her life, then now she felt a different emotion rising because of these 2 meals. Just these 2 meals alone were enough to make her want to marry him. Who would not wish to wake up every morning to delicious soup dumpling and congee with pork and century egg? Who would not want to enjoy eggplant with garlic sauce every day? Who would not want to hug that beautiful body to sleep every night? Oh, she really was not after his body. It was just a sense of security. This eggplant with garlic sauce is too good. I'm going to cry. Mela had tears welling up in her eyes because she had dived too deep in love. As a chef, Mag enjoyed the praises from his customers. After running his tavern for such a long time, he had almost forgotten that feeling. Of course, he still preferred to be a chef. Eofi enjoyed this meal very much as beads of perspiration rolled down her forehead for this meal. Verb. Eofi covered her mouth and smiled embarrassedly. She was very full. She had eaten food that she would have had for the entire day in this afternoon alone. However, the sinfulness could not overpower the sense of satisfaction. This was a very dangerous signal. Usually, this was when one would grow fat. Mr. Hades, I think opening a tavern is a waste of your talent. Eofi looked at Mag, and said sincerely, your cooking is not any worse than your wine brewing skills. It's really to die for. It can't be helped. Everyone has their limits. Sometimes, you must know how to give and take. Mag sighed. He could only run the tavern for a while, and then run the restaurant for a while. That is really a pity. Eofi sighed as well. She found it a pity that others would not be able to try Mag's culinary skills. The court did not make things difficult for you, right? Mag asked as he put his bowl down. The procedures all went on very smoothly because the culprit had been executed, while it was said that the mastermind committed suicide or rode away. Eofi nodded. With some residual fear, she said, it was Boss Boris from Reese Tavern. I didn't expect it to be him. He had been the real big boss of Rodu's taverns, an important figure here, so she had not expected him to do anything to her. However, him taking in poison to commit suicide and the incident of Boris's house being robbed all reminded her of Mr. Hades's family. But she had no evidence. Of course, she would never tell anyone else about it. Mr. Hades and his family had taken great risks to save her and Mela. She only had to remember that. As for this favor, she would not be able to repay it in her lifetime. We will get going, then. The workers are still repairing the damaged area. I have to go and take a look. Eofi and Mela helped to clean up the dining table before taking their leave. Why did you accept her money? Mag looked at Irina curiously after closing the door. You're a fool if you don't take the money that's right in front of you, Irina said with a smile. Mag did not believe that was the reason, and continued looking at her. You still don't understand women. This 1 million is money to buy her life. It was also akin to returning our favor. If you hadn't accepted this money, she would have felt uneasy in front of us in the future. This is a woman, Irina said with a smile. I see, Mag nodded thoughtfully. It was true that he did not really understand women. He was merely women's cup of tea. In his previous life, it was because he was rich. In this life, he was rich, talented, and very powerful. If you had no money and not enough talent, you had to understand women. And no matter how well you understood women, you might still only be a spare tire. The matter had been resolved, and they had also gotten their money. Mag closed the door of the shop, and went upstairs for an afternoon nap. After that, he went to retrieve the bamboo container buried under the acacia tree at the end of the street. Michael sent good news over. The demons at the Boundless Sea Realm had finally reached a consensus under the pressure of the Great Old Ones and with Mag's help. They had decided to join the Peace Alliance, and had agreed to sign the new peace treaty. The Roth Empire had lowered their stance, the demons had given in, the orcs were no longer haughty, and the trolls that previously could not decide had all made their stand to join the Peace Alliance. This was the way to survival for the trolls. They were not a weak race, but they loved to remain neutral. The various races had agreed to send their representatives to Chaos City 3 days later to sign the new peace treaty and to form the Peace Alliance to fend off the army of the dead. The specific details would be discussed on site, including the troops to be sent to the north to prevent the army of the dead from advancing south, as well as to destroy the Great Old One, Thulhu. We seem to have done something enough to be put in the history books. Mag smiled as he passed the letter to Irina. Irina read the letter and smiled. She looked at Mag, and said, if the Norland continent can pull through this ordeal, things may become different. Mag nodded with a smile. It was difficult to disagree with Irina. Once the alliance was formed, the various races would have to establish in-depth cooperation with each other for this battle. For example, the Allied forces would enter the Roth Empire, the dwarves would have to help provide the weapons for the Allied forces, the goblins might be in charge of security, the giant dragons would be in charge of aerial attacks. Mag's blood burned with passion just thinking about the scene of so many races working together in battle. What's the situation like at the elves' side? Mag suddenly recalled that he had not asked about the elves and night elves for a long time. In addition, the letter did not state the elves' stand. I wiped out Elliot's nest yesterday, set all the farm slaves and servants free, and brought them to Chaos City, Irina said. You killed him? Mag asked. No. His life belongs to Shirley. I would not kill him. Irina shook his head. Mag nodded. Elliot was Shirley's father. If he killed Shirley's father, there would be no end to this hatred. The elves are in a mess right now. I am a little unclear about what Helena wants to do. Given her character, she would not let things spiral downward like this uncontrollably, Irina said in bewilderment as she furrowed her brows. Perhaps she is planning something. Perhaps she has already lost her power, and does not want to struggle anymore. Mag stroked his chin. He, too, was unsure of the situation in the Wind Forest now. Chapter 2113 The Orcs will never submit. Eofi tapped on her nose with exasperation, and said, all you know is how to eat, girl. You'll be kidnapped by someone sooner or later. Mela nodded, and said, if only Mr. Hades would kidnap me. You're hopeless. Eofi rolled her eyes, and went into the tavern. However, she couldn't help thinking about something. If Mr. Hades wanted to kidnap her, should she accept it readily, or pretend to decline first? The tavern wasn't seriously damaged. The shattered door was already removed. Eofi ordered a custom-made iron door from a blacksmith. At the same time, she reinforced the door frame and installed rollers. Even though it would take more effort to open and close the door, it wouldn't be so easy to bust in from the outside again. After replacing a couple of tables and chairs, and repairing the floor that was crushed by the axe, the tavern's external work was almost done. However, Eofi still had to get a blacksmith to redo the damaged cella's door, and employed a magic caster to install a magic shield again. Mela looked at the cella's door that was marked with 2 deep axes strikes, and joyfully said, Miss, you're really a clairvoyant. This cellar has saved our lives. Yes. It was really close. Eofi also nodded with lingering fear. If it weren't for this magic shield and specially made cella's door, perhaps they could not have held on till Mr. Hades had rushed over. Miss, is Mr. Hades very formidable? Mela asked suddenly. No. He's very lucky. A man who can cook usually has good luck. Eofi shook her head smilingly. I see. Mela nodded thoughtfully. Ain't I right? Mr. Hades should be very formidable, Eofi thought. Even Mela could see something, so how could she not have felt anything? Mr. Hades appeared at the most critical moment to subdue that scary assailant, and then brought her to find the instigator. Although the court's people said that the assailants were killed due to an internal conflict, she didn't believe it. Mr. Hades had to have played a very important part in it, including the incident of Boris's residence being burgled. She knew very well that there was only one assailant. The other one was played by Mr. Hades. Of course, all this wasn't important. She would feign ignorance. She only had to remember that it was Mr. Hades and his family who saved her and Mela. Then, do we have anything to send over to Mr. Hades tonight? Mela looked at Eofi, and gulped with a smile. Mr. Hades's cooking is simply fantastic. Why don't I send you over? Eofi rolled her eyes. Really? Mela looked at Eofi seriously. Go and do your work. What are you thinking with that little head of yours all day? Eofi knocked her on the head. Even she didn't dare to think about it. The Twilight Forest. The Og tribe. Within a black castle, Oster, who had a black hook attached to his right arm, sat on the throne, and looked at the dozens of Orc tribal leaders in the hall. With an unhappy expression, he asked, where are the people from the Lynx tribe? A subordinate standing by the side went up to Oster, and whispered in his ear, "Chief, the Lynx tribe and the Mutt tribe have already joined the peace alliance 2 days ago. They're not sending anyone to our meeting today." "Humph! A bunch of softies." Oster banged on the table angrily. The great hall was silent. All the tribal leaders had different expressions, and no one made a sound. The news of the devil showing itself at the snow plain in the extreme north and amassing a scary army of the dead had already been spreading for the past 2 days, and the tribal leaders had heard of it. Oster most likely gathered them for a discussion today because of it too. After the Roth Empire's invasion, the power of the pro-war faction with the Og tribe in the lead was greatly diminished. The Fok tribe took the chance to convince the other tribes, and had successfully converted some of them. Under such circumstances, there were only 40 to 50 tribes left in the pro-war alliance, and their power was far inferior to what it had been before. Oster stood up, and said to all the tribal leaders in the hall, "You all should have heard about the recent incident. The devil and the army of the dead have appeared in the north of the Roth Empire. The Roth Empire is definitely going to be attacked if they move southwards. This is a great opportunity for us to seek revenge. The Roth Empire launched a secret attack on us, and killed our people and brethren. We can never forgive and forget about that. Chaos City tries to make us sign the peace treaty, and even wants us to send troops to help defend it against the devil. Why should we *CK that peace treaty? We want revenge." The anger in the tribal leaders was lit up, and they also joined in the scolding. Oster's lips curled up, and he continued, "We Orcs will never submit to others, but that little girl in the Fok tribe wants to lead those weaklings and sign those demeaning terms. Will you agree to it?" "We won't agree to it. The Orcs will never submit." All the tribal leaders got up and roared. "Good." Oster looked at all of them with satisfaction and nodded. "I knew you all were real men with guts. I didn't ask you all to come here today to submit to the Roth Empire. Instead, I want to discuss how we are going to send our troops to attack the Fok tribe and kill Connie, the evil girl who killed her father." All the tribal leaders went white after hearing that. The power that Connie had in the Twilight Forest was no less than what Oster had. Furthermore, she had the hairless monk protecting her. Oster had been trying to kill her a few times, but to no avail. "I have already asked her to come and discuss the peace treaty tomorrow. The hairless monk will definitely come along with her. You guys will lie in ambush outside the hall. I will smash the cup as a signal, and all of us will act together and kill both of them right on the spot." Oster looked at all of them, and revealed a cunning smile. Marvelous plan. Although all the tribal leaders despised Oster for using such a despicable plan against a little maiden, they still praised him. Then, Oster discussed the assassination's details with all leaders. He only let them leave after doing all the preparations and making sure Connie and Rex couldn't escape. "Great! I want to see how this little B*TCH is going to escape this time." Oster tilted his head back and laughed. He hadn't been this happy for a long time. When he was in charge of the Twilight Forest again, and after the devil and the army of the dead marched southwards and the allied forces suffered huge losses, it would be the time for him to conquer the world. That night, Oster went to sleep early after having a good meal. The black hook that he had custom-made by a dwarven blacksmith was removed and placed next to the bed. Suddenly, a dainty figure jumped down silently from the roof, and a silver beam pierced through the darkness. He wanted to raise his right hand instinctively, but he realized his entire right arm was already gone. He quickly grabbed his saber with his left and slashed across. However, after his momentary mistake, it was already too late to act. That petite black figure tossed out her dagger. The cold gleam flashed across, and it sank into Oster's heart as he struggled to get up. The petite figure tapped the headboard with her feet, and landed lightly on the floor. The other dagger in her left hand stabbed into Oster's neck. "Why you?" Oster covered his neck, and glared at Connie, who lit up a beast oil lamp and removed her veil. "In order not to lose my way, I have spent the whole day hanging up in your room. It's tiring, right? Connie looked at the 2 daggers in Oster's heart and neck, and nodded with satisfaction. I guess Master won't scold me this time round. Oster sat slowly, and grabbed the saber next to the bed as he stared at Connie angrily. Don't struggle. I've put poison on the daggers. Looking at the time, it should be acting right now, Connie said calmly. Oster only felt a sudden pain in his heart, and all his strength seemed to be drained at that moment. He could no longer hold onto his saber. He rolled to the floor from his bed. I'm impossible. Oster slumped onto the floor weakly, and looked up at Connie with a ferocious expression. Even her father lost to him. She was just a little girl. How could she? He was indignant. You have no idea how much I have suffered in order to kill you. Connie smilingly extended her hands to show her palms that were covered with calluses and a black dagger that she held again. Oster glared as he watched that dagger enter his glabella, and then fell backwards. Although I thought of many things to say, Master said the antagonists died because they talked too much. Silence is an assassin's basic demeanor. Connie retracted her gaze, and threw the beast oil lamp in her hand onto the quilt at the side. The flames started to burn ragingly, but her figure disappeared in the dark again. Fire! Fire! It's the chief's room. Quick, put out the fire. Chief! The chief was murdered. What happened? Help! There's an assassin. Catch the assassin! The flames were 10-odd meters high, and the news of Oster's death spread rapidly. The whole Og tribe descended into a panic. All the chiefs looked at the raging flames in a daze. Oster was still talking about how to ambush and kill Connie in the day, and now he was killed all of a sudden. Enemy attack! A shrill alarm of the beast horn sounded at the fences, but it was silenced abruptly. Countless torches suddenly appeared in the dark. The drawbridge was cut, the gates were opened, and countless orc warriors dashed into the Og tribe. The Og tribe's soldiers on the city walls surrendered before they could even defend themselves. The entire tribe was soon conquered. Thousands of orcs encircled Oster's residence in layers. The Og tribe's elders and the chiefs were in a complete panic. They hid in their residences, and didn't dare to appear. They only managed to regain a little of their wits now. They thought they were the hunters, but now they finally realized they were, in fact, the prey in the trap. Connie rode up on a white unicorn. Clearing her throat, she said, "Those inside, listen up. I'm Chief Connie of the Fok tribe. Oster was a violent tyrant and a coward. I have followed the gods' orders, and sacrificed him to them. You are being surrounded by the most powerful and elite orc army in the Twilight Forest right now, but I will give you a chance to surrender and join the Peace Alliance. Put down your weapons and come out with your hands on your head. Join the Peace Alliance voluntarily, and I'll give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. All those who try to resist, I'll send you all as a sacrifice together with Oster." Right then, everyone was moved by this young chief. Yes. This was the quality of a leader. There was a hint of toughness among her gentleness. Her figure was petite, but she had a commanding presence. Rex was on a unicorn behind Connie, with a gratified smile on his face. Only God knew how many times she had practiced that speech with him. Soon after, dozens of tribal leaders lined up with their hands on their heads, and came out of their residences. They signed on the Orcs and the Peace Alliance's treaty. Oster was already dead, and he was killed by Connie. This meant that the highest authority in the Twilight Forest had already transferred. After tonight, only Connie's voice would be heard in the Twilight Forest. After a brief internal conflict in the Og tribe, a new leader was elected, and he signed the alliance contract on behalf of the Og tribe with indignation. Connie sat on the unicorn, looked down at the orc chiefs, and said in a cold voice, "Tomorrow, the Fok tribe will hold the very first Orcs peace meeting. I hope to see all of you there." The little figure commanded an irresistible awe. All the chiefs nodded in agreement. Connie looked at the new Og tribe's chief and elders, and coldly said, "The Og tribe will be temporarily taken over until I'm sure that Oster's influence is completely removed. I strongly advise all of you not to have any dissatisfaction. The result of resorting to violence will only be death." "Yes," the new chief lowered his head, and answered in a trembling voice. All the elders lowered their heads too. Although they were indignant, they didn't dare to show their displeasure. "That's all." Connie waved her hand. A troop of orcs entered Oster's residence, and began taking over the Og tribe. Connie and Rex entered the residence too. Connie realized that they were alone, so she tilted her head, and asked Rex smilingly, "Master, how was my earlier performance?" "Passable." Rex nodded slightly. "I think I looked awesome." Connie pursed her lips. She wasn't satisfied with Rex's review. "How many strikes did you use to Oster?" "3 strikes, Connie answered casually before adding, "I thought he talked too much, so I gave him 1 more strike." "You waited in ambush for him the whole day, and yet you needed to use 3 strikes to kill a maimed person. I'm a little disappointed in you." "Whoa. Although he was maimed, he was a 10th-tier maimed person." Connie glared. "Then, what about the fact that you couldn't find his room because you were lost, and I had to bring you there eventually?" I was not lost. I just occasionally couldn't find my way." "Look, Master. The moon is so bright tonight. I wonder if Babla will go back to the moon. It'll be great if she can bring back some more moonstones for me." Connie drew lines in front of her gently as she changed the topic. Rex sighed. "Why did I take in a disciple who has no sense of directions?" Chapter 2115 Inquisitive Snail. Yabimiya, Babla, Rena, Gina, Shirley, Anna, and the other kids who stayed sat around a table, enjoying hot pot. There was a grill at the side filled with kebabs. "Say, boss has left for almost 2 weeks, right? When will they be back?" Yabimiya lamented as she dipped tripe in the pot. "Boss said he would be gone for a month before he left. He probably will be enjoying himself for another half a month." Shirley chewed on a raw cucumber to soothe the burn from the spiciness on her lips. Ferris poured the potato slices beside her into the pot with a smile, and said, "Speaking of which, I really miss the delicious food boss makes. I already have a feeling that when boss is back, I will stuff myself for a few days to make up for my stomach that has become smaller during this period," Hannah said thoughtfully. "Right, Hannah, how's your wine brewing factory going?" Mia asked. "It's all right. We've started normal production, and we should be able to produce our first batch of wine next month," Hannah said with a nod. Babla took 2 kebabs from the grill, and looked at everyone seriously as she said, "Guys, we have to treasure the delicacies before us. I feel that the Norland continent is in a rather dangerous situation currently. If things get worse, come to the moon with me." "Did something major happen?" Shirley put her cucumber down slowly, and looked at Babla seriously. Everyone turned to look at Babla too. She had been busy helping out at the city lord's castle recently, and finally made time to come back today to gather with them. Some scary fellows appeared in the north of the Roth Empire. I might have to leave Chaos City in a few days' time. I don't know how long I'll have to be gone for." Babla nodded. However, she very quickly smiled, and said, "But don't be too worried. It will definitely be solved. After all, the races of the Norland continent will be forming an alliance soon." The ladies did not know these things too well. Camilla, who knew a little, was not in Chaos City currently. However, after hearing what Babla said, they all started to be a little careful. Recently, there have been people coming to the ice cream shop to ask when boss is coming back and when the restaurant will resume operations. "Say, is there a way we can contact boss?" Yabimiya changed the topic. No. Boss is such a heartless man. He brought his 2 darlings out to play, and forgot us all at home," Angela grumbled resentfully. Everyone laughed, and the atmosphere lightened a lot. when Mag was closing the door of the tavern, he sneezed. Would gods catch a cold too? Mag muttered under his breath as he rubbed his nose. Maybe someone is bad-mouthing you behind your back. Irina, who was holding a bottle of red wine and 2 wine glasses, looked at Mag with a smile. I am such a nice person. I suppose no one would scold me. Mag walked over with a smile. He took the red wine from Irina's hand, and gave her a peck on her cheek. Are the kids asleep? Annie is still drawing. I told her to turn in early. Amy played the entire day, and was tired, so she slept after showering, Irina said with a nod as she blushed. It seems it will be a night of entanglement once again. Mag poured the red wine into a decanter, and swirled the red liquid. It was just as intoxicating as the night. What is Mr. Hades doing on such a lovely night? Eofi sat by the window with a corner of her curtain lifted. She looked at the closed curtain diagonally across the street as she propped her chin on her hand. Faint light was shining out from the window. Right, they have kids. They must be putting their children to sleep now. Besides, they went out today, and did so many things. Then they had to serve their customers at night. They must be very tired. They would probably lie in bed and fall asleep immediately after showering, as she thought. Eofi's gaze landed on the book under the corner of her blanket. She turned to glance at Mela, who had fallen sound asleep on the little bed, before reaching over to take the plum in the golden vase. Mela got a fright yesterday. Therefore, she was sleeping in Eofi's room tonight. Eofi flipped through the exquisitely drawn book softly and blushed. She could not help but think of Mr. Hades. Eofi, you're a terrible woman. After a long time, Eofi stuffed the book back under her blanket, and looked dreamily toward the drawn curtains. The next morning, Mag made breakfast. After that, he took a basket of escargots out of the refrigerator, and started cleaning them. Amy was the first to come downstairs. Father, what is this? She asked curiously as she watched Mag. This is an escargot. It's an ingredient, Mag introduced with a smile, and passed one to Amy. Amy put it in her mouth and bit on it. She frowned and looked at the escargot with 2 tooth prints as she shook her head, and said, "This is not nice. It is unprocessed. Of course it is not good." Mag smiled. He took the escargot back from Amy, and used fathead fish to cut off the tail of the escargot. Amy carried a stool over, and took a soup dumpling out from the pot. After that, she sat in front of Mag, eating her soup dumpling while she asked, "But the shell is very hard. Would it turn soft after cooking?" "No. The shell cannot be eaten. We can only eat the meat." Mag pointed to one escargot that was climbing onto the side of the basin, and said, "Look, there is meat within the shell. That is the soft part. It looks like a snail." Amy inched over and stared at it with her eyes shining bright. She quickly looked up at Mag, and asked, "In that case, can snails be eaten? I saw many in the backyard yesterday." "Snails?" Mag's first reaction was to shake his head. However, after thinking about it, French escargots were a famous French dish. It was not right to say that snails could not be eaten. However, the strange thing was that while Mag could accept the spicy escargot sold at roadside stalls, he could not accept the French escargot served in Western restaurants, no matter how similar they looked. "Some snails can be eaten, but those in our backyard can't," Mag said with a smile. "If that wishing well lied to you, saying that those snails can be eaten, let's cover that well up." He was worried he'd see a table with a large pot of snail soup when he woke up the next morning. That scene. It was scary just thinking about it. Therefore, he made sure that Amy's system did not have the chance to give out strange missions. "I see," Amy nodded. She then asked curiously, "In that case, which snails can be eaten?" "New quest, Inquisitive Snail. Please find edible snails and cook them." The system's voice rang in Amy's head. Chapter 2116. Please be merciful. There were many types of snails. Many of them might look alike, but they were, in fact, very different. However, it was good that Amy was curious. As her father, he naturally had to satisfy her curiosity. System, I need some weird knowledge, Mag said inwardly. There are many varieties of snails, most of them are poisonous and inedible. Meanwhile, we're not sure if the edible species of snails on Earth such as the French escargots, the garden snails, and Acadenella are available on the Norland continent. The French escargots have a thick and round shell. Its shell is brownish and shiny, with many black and brown stripes. The system fed him a ton of knowledge. I gained more weird knowledge now. Mag absorbed the information briefly before imparting it to Amy. Amy listened carefully. After a while, she asked, "We can't eat the poisonous snails, but we can eat the non-poisonous ones. Then, I can let Ugly Duckling eat the snails first, and if Ugly Duckling is fine, that means the snail is not poisonous, and we can eat it, right?" The eyes of Ugly Duckling, which was crouching at the side, and looking at the soup dumpling in Amy's plate, widened. It quickly stood up, and quietly backed off. "There's something very wrong with you. It sounds reasonable, but it actually isn't so." Mag shook his head with a smile. Being edible and being suitable to be made into a delicious dish are two very different things. For example, we won't die if we eat the leaves on the tree at the front door, but the leaves cannot be used to make a delicious dish. Amy listened seriously. Mag continued, "It's the same with the snails. Perhaps it's not poisonous, but its texture can be very bad, or it can have a horrible taste. Such snails are not edible snails, either." "I see," Amy nodded thoughtfully, and took a bite of the bun. Feeling rather bothered, Amy said, "Then, where can I find edible snails?" Mag looked at Amy with furrowed brows. Then, he quickly relaxed his frown. He got it. The little one had to have received a new systems mission, and it had to be related to finding edible snails. "It is really a bothersome system," Mag complained inwardly before asking, "System, I want to order French escargots. It's not available." The system's answer was short and sweet. "Other edible snails will do too," Mag continued. "Can the host please not interfere in the missions issued by the other systems? This is not good for the system which is educating its host," the system warned. "I'm helping Amy educate her system. There's no such thing such as the system educating the host," Mag said calmly. "Please be merciful, just tell me if you are selling it or not. I have a lot of money now. As long as it's an edible snail, I'll pay you 100 copper coins for every single one of them," Mag said generously. "Host, you haven't received the permission for that ingredient yet. Please work harder. Or, pay more," the system gravely said. 101 That's all," Mag said decisively. "As long as it's edible, 101 copper coins for every single one of them," the system confirmed again. "Yes." Ding! 101 copper coins are successfully deducted. "Could the host please proceed to the backyard now? There is a brown snail at the roots of the 3 osmanthus trees. It's not poisonous, and is edible." The system's happy voice sounded. F***ck. Mag's expression froze on his face. He'd just said that the snails in the backyard were absolutely inedible earlier, and now he had to bring Amy to go look for edible snails in the backyard? This contradiction was way too much, and he couldn't accept it at that moment. He even suspected that the system put that snail in the backyard deliberately. This is a serious reminder to the host. That snail is alive, and is slowly moving. This system is not responsible if the snail disappears because the host is late to catch it, the system reminded Mag. "Father, do you know it?" Amy looked at Mag with her big and cute eyes, seeking his help. "All right. I simply cannot reject her." Mag sighed inwardly. He put down the knife, stood up, and smilingly said, "Let's go check out the backyard. Perhaps we can find one there." Amy slurped up all the soup on the plate, but she didn't move. Instead, she looked at Mag perplexedly. But, didn't you just say that the snails in the backyard are definitely not edible? Mag has an awkward expression. One indeed shouldn't speak too fast sometimes. However, Mag quickly recovered his smile and nodded. I felt that I spoke too soon earlier. We should check it out before we confirm it. Perhaps there are new snails here today. I see. Father is really a conscientious person. Amy nodded. She reached out to grab two of Mag's fingers, and followed him to the backyard happily. The tavern's backyard wasn't big. It was just a little flower bed. Irina modified it a few days ago. She added a magic shield that kept it warm, and planted some plants. The 3 original osmanthus trees were kept as they were. Floral fragrance greeted them as soon as they opened the door. It made them feel refreshed. A comfortable temperature coupled with flowers and plants, there naturally would be plenty of insects and little animals. Mag saw the 3 little snails hanging in a damp corner of the wall as soon as he walked out of the door. There they are. Amy noticed those 3 snails too. She quickly went over, crouched down, and observed them for a while before she turned around to look at Mag. Father, they look like they're edible. They obviously look different from the traits that I've described earlier, all right. Mag went forward to take a look at those 3 ordinary snails. They looked horribly slimy. Mag quickly shook his head. No. They're not edible. Let's look around. They usually hide around the roots of the trees. All right. I'll let you guys off for the time being, Amy told the 3 snails before running over to the 3 osmanthus trees, and started looking for the snails seriously. Oh, this. Mag had already noticed that giant brown snail at the 3rd osmanthus tree's roots. It was about the size of an adult's palm, and was a clear brown. It was round and fat, and looked just like a conch. Wow! What a big snail! Amy noticed that snail too. She jogged over and squatted down. That snail seemed to have sensed danger. It quickly turned around, and crawled up the tree trunk. Trying to escape. Amy pressed it down with her palm. That snail hid in its shell immediately. Amy held that big snail, and asked Mag expectantly, Father, can this snail be eaten? This was the biggest snail that she had ever seen before. Yes. This should be an edible snail. Mag nodded. Be it the size or the appearance, this snail looked like the French escargots. It had to be the snail that the system mentioned. Irina suddenly appeared at the door. Leaning against the door frame, she looked at the snail in Amy's hand, and lazily said, This is the cow snail. Its meat is acidic and corrosive, and it's poisonous. It's not edible. It can't be eaten? There must be a lot of meat in such a big snail, Amy said regrettably, looking at the big snail in her hands. This can't be eaten. Mag had an awkward expression. He had just said that this was an edible snail, and now he was proven wrong by Irina. After all, Irina was an elf. She definitely knew more about these small animals than him. Under the 3rd tree. This should be the snail that the system mentioned. Unless, the system had cheated him of his money? You can test it for yourself, Irina said to Mag smilingly. There's no need for that. Mag had no interest in snails in the first place. Furthermore, this one had a sour and corrosive texture, which was even worse. He already felt nauseous thinking about that taste. What a pity. Amy tossed that big snail out into the snow beyond the yard. She had seen the area that it crawled by earlier. The slime that it left behind had corroded the tree bark. Mother, what kind of snails can be eaten then? Amy asked Irina curiously. There are over 10,000 kinds of snails in the wind forest, but most of them are not edible. Some of them are even poisonous. However, some are edible, and they taste rather nice after they are cooked. Irina walked around the yard, and finally stopped under the 3rd osmanthus tree. She crouched down, and picked up a little grey snail at the bottom of the trunk. There you are. This is a grey rock snail. Although it looks ordinary, it's actually full of nutrients. We simply need to knock off its shell, bite off its head, and it can be eaten right away. Wow, an edible snail. We found it. Amy received that snail from Irina happily. So it was hidden down there. Mag finally realized that. The system didn't lie to him. It was he who thought that earlier snail was the target. However, looking at that snail that was about the size of a coin, it was no bigger than a river snail. Wait a section. Mag reached out to stop Amy, who was about to bite the head of that snail off. As a father, he really couldn't stand by and watch Amy eat a snail alive. Father, do you want to eat it too? Amy looked up at Mag. After a moment of hesitation, she passed the snail to him with a smile. You can have it, then. Mag was touched by Amy's filial piety. However, he still rejected that slimy-looking snail. He shook his head with a smile. Although this snail can be eaten, we don't really have to eat it. Look at how lonely it is in this snowy environment. Let's put it back where it was. Amy looked at that snail, and shook her head. Look at how lonely it is. Why don't I eat it? It's warm in my tummy. Mag actually couldn't find a reason to reject her at that moment. Live snails don't taste nice. We elves only eat the live snails when we are too hungry and have no other choice. Irina removed that snail from Amy's hands, and put it back on the tree again. Mag raised his eyebrows and nodded slightly. They indeed needed an authoritative mother. Irina patted Amy's head, and said, "One isn't enough. I'll bring you to catch more when we return to the wind forest again, and we can eat to our heart's content." Fantastic! Amy immediately nodded her head happily. Hey, Mag felt he was still wrong eventually. All right. Since we're all awake, let's have breakfast first, Mag told them before going back to the house. Annie had already come downstairs with the new picture book that she had drawn overnight. It was still the story of the Little Mermaid. The previous book was taken by Xi, so this child redrew it. I didn't expect there was still space for improvement when the previous book was already so well drawn. Mag flipped over it once, feeling rather shocked. The content didn't change much, but the drawing style became more mature, and the details were getting more perfect. It resembled an intricate artwork. Annie's talent in drawing and the advantage of the tentacle monster were perfectly displayed. If it was another comic artist, she wouldn't be able to draw such a perfect picture book in a month, let alone overnight. Annie smiled shyly. She didn't speak, but it was obvious that she was very happy. After breakfast, Mag continued to process the escargots. Irina stood at the side with a glass of water as she looked at the escargots in the basin in front of Mag, and curiously asked, "Are these the water snails?" "No, these are escargots, not snails," Mag clarified seriously. "He wouldn't be able to suck it if they were snails. They look the same to me. They all have a shell and rings of swirls." Irina didn't disagree nor agree with Mag, but these are really not snails. Escargots taste fantastic when they are stir-fried with chili. Mag cut the last escargot before washing them with clean water a few times, making sure that all the dirty stuff was cleaned out. The escargot were cut to their intestines. They were clean after washing with water a few times. Only such escargots could be sucked with a peace of mind. The cleaned escargots were placed in the refrigerator. It wasn't suitable to eat escargots in the morning, and he had to go out first. Before Mag could leave, there was someone knocking at the door. Mag opened the door. It was the agent, Fitch. Fitch stood at the door, and smilingly said to Mag, "Hello, Mr. Hades. I hope I didn't disturb you by looking for you so early in the morning." Ever since he had understood Mr. Hades' plans, his admiration for Mr. Hades was boundless. Furthermore, the customers who came to inquire for shops to rent were endless. They almost broke the agency's door. Holding the general power of attorney of half of the shops on Romo Street, Fitch felt power in his grasp for the very first time. Even his boss invited him to his house, but he had to reject him because he was too busy. He was indeed too busy. He had to bring people to look at the shops until midnight. He had already received more than 100 proposals, and many of them were famous shops in Rodu. Obviously, under the influence of the Twin Stars Titan Tavern and Saipan Tavern, a new sophisticated commercial circle was in the midst of brewing. And he was going to be a part of history, which made him excited. Mag nodded slightly, and said to Fitch, "It's fine. I'm about to go out." "What's the matter?" Fitch quickly said, "Oh, it's like this. You asked me to audit those businesses that wanted to rent the shops for their backgrounds. I have already received 108 proposals, and many of them are good business. They have also given very good rental suggestions, so I want to discuss them with you to see if we can settle on some of them." Chapter 2118 Do you think the way we eat is appetizing? Indeed, businessmen had a very keen sense of smell. They could smell the opportunity to make money in the very first moment. He's indeed Mr. Hades. Is 108 businesses still below his expectations? Perhaps he has a greater plan? Fitch was so respectful. He was still gloating over the past 2 days' result, but he didn't expect that it was still not enough for Mr. Hades. It's a little less than expected, but not many people know about it yet. There will be more people asking about it after a few days, Fitch explained with a smile. Mag nodded. There would indeed be more people asking about it once the news spread. He said to Fitch, "Why don't you leave the information here? I'll see if there are any suitable businesses. I'll let you know later." "Sure. I won't hold you up, then. Please let me know if you have any needs." Fitch gave Mag the documents with both his hands before leaving. Mag liked such young men who did their jobs well and fast. After putting the documents on the bar counter, Mag went to the human resource market in the south of the city. Currently, the tavern was already on track, so manpower became his biggest problem. Amy could be the cashier and take orders, and Annie could help to serve, but he didn't dare to depend on Irina. He, who had taken on multiple roles, felt way too busy. How should he put it? He didn't feel blissful when he was working. This was a very bad experience. A man who was rich and talented and had power, and yet he had to make do with his job. This didn't match his character. However, he had overestimated Rodu's human resource market. The weather was cold, and so was the human resource market. There weren't many recruitment agencies that were open, to speak nothing of finding good service staff. Mag walked around before leaving with disappointment. "Why don't we let Ferris and the ladies come over to help out?" Irina said to the bothered Mag. "After all, they should be free right now." "No. We will be returning in 2 weeks' time. Mamie Restaurant is our base." Mag shook his head. It would be easy for the moment, but it would be troublesome again 2 weeks later. Saipan Tavern was different from the crayfish restaurant previously. Mag had bought up half of the street, and he wanted it to continue operating so he could gain interest from it. Amy, who was playing at the side, suddenly said, "Big Sister Eofi has a lot of big sisters with her. Why don't we ask her to recommend us a few of them?" "Oh, yes." Mag's eyes lit up. He had forgotten about Eofi, the lady boss who had operated her business for years. "Amy, go and invite Big Sister Eofi and Big Sister Mela over for lunch," Mag said to Amy. "Alrighty." Amy put down Ugly Duckling, and skipped out of the door. Soon, Amy knocked on the Titan Tavern's door. Eofi, who didn't sleep well last night, rubbed her eyes and looked around. She only saw Amy standing at the door when she looked down. Slightly shocked, she said, What's up?" "Big Sister Eofi, Father would like to invite you and Big Sister Mela over for lunch at noon later," Amy said well-behavedly. Mr. Hades wants to invite us for lunch. Eofi's eyes shone. She was instantly awake, but to appear more reserved, she was prepared to decline initially. Really? Can we really go have lunch at noon? Mela already ran out from the back with surprise on her face and nodded. All right. We'll definitely be there. Thanks, Eofi flicked a glance at Mela. She could only helplessly nod and say, we'll have to bother Mr. Hades then. You have to come, all right. I'll go back first. Amy nodded and turned to go home. Wait a section. I loves to eat desserts, right? A friend gave me some pastries yesterday. Let me give you some. Eofi stopped Amy, and went back to get a little basket filled with all kinds of goodies. Thank you, big sister Eofi. Amy held a biscuit in her mouth, and went off happily with the basket. Mela asked Eofi, Miss, do you want to go back to sleep? What for? Let's change and put on makeup. Eofi slapped Mela's head with a smile, and went into the house. Why is Miss always hitting me for no reason recently? Mela touched her head and closed the door with befuddlement. Mela, why do you think Mr. Hades is inviting us over for lunch? Perhaps he cooked too much food, and they can't finish it. He hasn't started cooking yet. Then, do you think the way we eat is appetizing, Miss? 211 Mag made a grilled fish, and stir-fried a few dishes. Lastly, he served 2 plates of stir-fried escargots, and all the dishes were ready. What a big fish! Mela saw the huge grilled fish on the grilling plate, and gulped as soon as she entered. Eofi and Mela had never eaten such a big fish before. Mag looked at the kitchenware in Eofi's hand, and said, it's just a simple lunch. Miss Eofi, you don't have to be so polite every time. I bought this before today, but Mela and I didn't need to use so many of them, so they are perfect for you, Mr. Hades, and your family. Eofi passed the kitchenware to Mag smilingly. Amy washed her hands, climbed onto her high chair, and smilingly said, it's fine. We can always eat together in the future. Eofi smiled. It was just innocent child talk, but she still couldn't help throwing a glance at Mag. We can get together often in the future. We're neighbors, and it's convenient too, Mag replied laughingly as he asked Eofi and Mela to take a seat. Eofi greeted Irina and Annie before sitting down with Mela. Is this grilled fish similar to the Mamie restaurant's grilled fish too? Mela asked Mag curiously. Mela, you also know that Mamie restaurant has grilled fish? Mag looked at Mela with surprise. She likes to read gourmet magazines in her free time. She might have read about it somewhere, Eofi explained on her behalf. Yes. Mamie restaurant's grilled fish is similar to this. Have you, Mr. Hades, and your family been to Mamie restaurant for a meal before? Mela's eyes were filled with envy. Mag nodded. Yes. We've stayed in Chaos City for some time before, and have tried almost all of Mamie restaurant's dishes, so I've learned to make some of them. Wow! You're so awesome! Mela looked at Mag with adoration. Mamie restaurant was the holy land in her heart. Mr. Hades not only had been there before, he even learned how to cook the restaurant's dishes. Try the grilled fish I made, and see if it matches the Mamie restaurants in your imagination, Mag said with a smile, and picked up a piece of fish with the serving chopsticks. Eofi looked at the fish in Mela's bowl, and actually felt a tinge of envy. The tender meat was wrapped under the slightly charred fish skin. The spiciness and fragrance blossomed on the tip of her tongue. It was a taste that shook her soul, making Mela unable to recover for a very long time. What was her imagination? Oh, it was too lacking. This was a taste she was never able to imagine. The spiciness made her feel hot all over, and the freshness of the meat brought her to another world, as though she had jumped into a pool on a hot summer day. It was refreshing. Mela was unable to comprehend how the charred fish skin and tender fish meat could coexist. The spiciness did not cover the fish's freshness, and instead brought it up another level. This is too good. Mr. Hades, please accept me as your disciple. I want to learn from you. Mela put her chopsticks down, and looked at Mag with sincerity and admiration. Hey! Mag was taken aback. He did not expect Mela's first reaction was to ask for a mentorship. Mela. Eofi looked at Mela in shock as well. This wench is not using this as an excuse to get a free meal, right? Mela also realized that her actions seemed a little too rash. She blushed, and stuttered, I just think that you cook really well, and this is the best food I've ever had in my life, so, you want to learn it? Mag smiled. Mela quickly nodded, her eyes glowing brightly. However, Mag shook his head, and said, in that case, it would depend on whether your young mistress is agreeable, and whether you have the talent in cooking. Young mistress. Mela turned to look at Eofi, and said seriously, I can cook for you after learning it. Eofi thought about it seriously for a second, and said, okay, I agree. She just wanted to eat. Mela would usually cook at home, but her culinary skills were mediocre. She was not to blame for that. Mela grew up with Eofi, and her culinary skills were taught by Eofi. To be able to reach that standard already showed that she was very talented. After all, Eofi would not even dare to try the dishes she made. If Mela could learn cooking from Mr. Hades, even if it was just a little, their meals could be greatly improved. They could not leech off Mr. Hades for a free meal forever. Before Eofi married over, she still had to be realistic. Mela could learn from Mr. Hades, and as Mela's parent one, it would make more sense for Eofi to come over for more free meals. Fantastic! Eofi looked at Mela with admiration. Mela had put in a lot of effort to create more chances for her. Mela, who had gotten Eofi's consent, looked at Mag again. Mag looked at Eofi, and nodded as he smilingly said, sure. Since Miss Eofi is agreeable, I'll test out your talent after the meal. If you pass, you can learn from me. Sure. Thank you. Mela nodded excitedly. Irina glanced at Mag, and did not voice any opinions on that. Let's eat. Mag put an escargot in his mouth. He held it with his lips, and he sucked the meat in quickly using his diaphragm. The spicy sauce in the shell came out together with the meat, traveling into his mouth. The spicy sauce, coupled with the chewy meat, gave the fresh escargot a marvelous texture. Then, a sip of chilled beer. This was an indescribable feeling. This was freshwater escargot. It neither had any fishy or muddy smell, nor had any soil or sand. Therefore, there was no worry of intestinal problems. All you had to do was suck hard and leave the rest to miracles. Mag sucked out 5 escargot in one go, and had some spicy cucumber, and then a sip of chilled beer. Refreshing. He looked at the stir-fried escargot before him with satisfaction. This was a top-grade dish to go with alcohol. Everyone was so stunned watching Mag eat that they forgot to eat. Amy copied Mag, and put an escargot in her mouth. She sucked on it for a while like a sweet, and almost spat it out. She looked at Mag with bewilderment, and asked, Father, do you just lick this snail? This is an escargot, not a snail, Mag corrected. When he saw that everyone was looking at him, he recalled that this was their first time trying this dish, so he introduced, when you eat an escargot, what you're eating is its meat. The meat of the escargot is hidden within its hard shell. We have to suck it out. There is a technique for sucking escargot. For beginners, it's easier to use your hands. Pick up an escargot like me, and put its opening to your mouth. After that, suck hard, and the meat will come out naturally. When you're more skillful at it, you can just put it in your mouth like me, and use your tongue to adjust its position in your mouth. After that, just suck on it softly before spitting the empty shell out. I see. Eofi nodded thoughtfully. It seemed Mr. Hades's tongue was very nimble, and he was also very good at sucking. After that, some adult images appeared in Eofi's mind, and her face flushed. Irina looked at Mag thoughtfully as well. So this was what he used to train his tongue? She knew best if it was nimble or not. Amy, who was a chowhound through and through, had already picked up an escargot. She copied Mag's action, putting it to her mouth, and giving it a hard suck. Amy's eyes lit up. She chewed on the meat that had landed in her mouth, and swallowed it before looking at Mag in surprise, and saying, "I sucked it out. The escargot is yummy. Very talented." Mag nodded with a smile. Amy was indeed very talented in this aspect. "Young mistress, what's wrong?" Mela was about to try with an escargot when she realized Eofi's face was red. "I might be a little drunk." Eofi took a sip from the cup beside her. "But you're drinking water." Mela was even more shocked. "The water today is rather intoxicating." Eofi glared at Mela, and hinted at her to eat quickly. Mela took the escargot, and she still ended in failure after a few tries. "Why can't I suck it out?" Mela looked at the escargot that had no more sauce in her hand. "Some people are just like that. It's all right. You can also pick the meat out with a toothpick." Mela placed a box of toothpick in front of Mela. Of course, eating escargot with toothpick was rather soulless. I think the author meant mistress instead. Chapter 2120. Do you think I still have the chance? It was apparent that Eofi was not able to take much spice. Although she kept drinking water, she still could not help taking in deep breaths. Mag poured her a large pint of beer, and dropped 2 ice cubes in. "Is this the new alcohol you brewed?" Eofi asked Mag in shock as she looked at the golden bubbly liquid in front of her. The liquor's aroma wafted over. "No. This is beer I bought from Mamie Restaurant. I am rather close with the owner of Mamie Restaurant, so I bought a barrel for myself," Mag replied. "Beer?" Eofi muttered softly. The sting on her lips was so intense that she could not help but take a big gulp of the drink. The cold and sweet beer entered her mouth, extinguishing the fire inside. It was almost as though she could hear the hissing sound of the flames being put out. The stinging sensation was immediately alleviated by more than half. It was a cooling sensation that made one shudder. How thrilling! On top of that, there was a light fragrance lingering in her mouth after swallowing the liquor. However, that fragrance would disappear quickly. It was very refreshing. "This liquor is good." Eofi could not help but praise the liquor in front of her. The golden color, the transparency, and the white foam hanging on the wall of the cup made it look elegant and unique. Eofi picked up her glass, and drank another mouthful. This time, she did not swallow immediately, but savored its taste slowly. This liquor was refreshing and smooth, but also rich. The alcohol was sweet, and the entire liquor blended very well and gently. After swallowing, a slight bitter taste lingered, but it was enjoyable. The amount of skill required to control that balance deserved a standing ovation. "Good liquor." Eofi placed her glass down, and observed this pint of beer in front of her again. Although it was not hard liquor, this beer still had a remarkable taste and texture. If it went for the liquor tasting event, it might just win a prize. "Good liquor indeed." Mag nodded. He was the one who brewed it. Of course it was good. Lunch might be a feast, but everyone still wiped the dishes clean. Eofi and Mela helped to clear the table. Mag called Mela over to the kitchen to test her. "How do you test culinary talent?" Eofi thought to herself as she stood at the kitchen door curiously. She was thinking if she should take part as well. Perhaps she was just lacking a good mentor. "Since you're so interested in Mamie Restaurant, you must know how this eggplant with garlic sauce is made, right?" Mag said to Mela. I've already memorized the recipe." Mela nodded. "But I've not made it before." Mag took out a few ingredients from the refrigerator, and placed them on the kitchen counter, saying, "I have all the ingredients here. Just make the eggplant with garlic sauce for me based on what you understood." Straight away, Mela was rather surprised that her test was to make the eggplant with garlic sauce. "Yes. There's no use memorizing the recipe. You will only know how much you've mastered it after you make it." Mag nodded. After teaching Mela how to light up the stove, he stood at the side with his hands behind him. Mela looked towards the door, asking for help. Eofi clenched her fist, and cheered her on before she dashed away. Without her backup, Mela turned away. She took in a deep breath, and closed her eyes to recall the recipe for the eggplant with garlic sauce. After that, she washed her hands and started preparing the ingredients. Mag stood at the side, watching without saying a word throughout. Other than being a little nervous, Mela's actions were rather swift. However, she had to have learned from a terrible teacher, for her cooking style was very wild. She held a cleaver like it was a hay cutter. The eggplant was cut unevenly, and Mela probably realized that as she even took the effort to refine it, but that caused the size difference to grow bigger. Mag sighed to himself. Just the basics alone would take ages to train. After that, Mela started cooking. She poured oil into the hot wok, and added chili broad bean paste. The cooking process did shock Mag. Mela performed way better than he had expected. She did rather well, be it on the timing to add the ingredients or the amount of seasoning added. It was worlds apart compared to her cutting skills. It seems she was misled. Mela looked at Mela, who turned off the fire and plated the eggplant with garlic sauce, thoughtfully. Other than the fact that the size wasn't uniform, the dish in Mela's hands did look rather like the eggplant with garlic sauce. Mela looked at Mag expectantly, and said, "Give it a try. There's no need for that. Your hand shook a little when you were adding the seasoning, so you've added a little too much salt. You did not stir-fry it in time, so there's a little burnt smell. The eggplant is not cut into pieces of equal size, so the texture would be bad," Mag said calmly. Mela's expectant expression froze. She pressed her lips together, and her eyes went red as her tears fell uncontrollably. "Mr. Hades, have you always been this strict?" Eofi smelled the fragrance, and thought that Mela must have succeeded. However, she did not expect Mag to criticize her so badly. "No, he has always been very gentle to big sisters," Amy said with a shake of her head. "Is that so?" Irina looked at Mag with a seeming smile. "Do you think I still stand a chance?" Mela asked with grievance as she tried to hold her tears back. Mag smiled and shook his head as he said, "No, you're hired." "Hey!" Mela's eyes widened as she looked at Mag with her mouth open in disbelief. "But I am rather curious about one thing. Did you learn your cooking from an executioner? What a suave style!" Mag looked at Mela curiously. "I learned it from..." Mela turned to look toward the door. Eofi, who was rather happy for Mela, froze upon hearing that. She looked rather awkward as she said to Irina, "I suddenly thought of something I had to do. Thank you for the warm lunch invitation. I'll be going first." Goodbye." Irina nodded slightly. Eofi left quickly with her face flushed red. If Mr. Hades was to find out that her culinary skills were so bad, it would be very embarrassing. Mela turned back and shook her head, saying, "I learned it from a butcher, not an executioner." Mag smiled. He knew who Mela probably inherited her culinary skills from. However, "Can I really learn cooking from you?" Mela was still in a little disbelief. "Yes. But before learning how to cook, you have to learn how to cut." Mag took out a pile of potatoes and carrots from the refrigerator. After that, he took a cleaver from the knife holder, and turned his wrist. The cleaver danced in the air. A minute later, Mag kept the cleaver. The potato skin fell, and a cute little bear appeared, looking rather similar to Ugly Duckling, which was sleeping on the counter. Wow! Impressive! Mela's eyes widened, looking as though she found a new land. It was the first time she knew that cleavers could be used that way. Having good cutting skills is the start to cooking. Today, we will start from learning cutting slices. Look at how I hold the knife. Chapter 2121 You're setting fire here. Mag watched Mela slice a potato slowly but steadily and nodded. Not bad. I'll give this cleaver to you then. Practice your cutting skills whenever you're free at home. Really? Master, this cleaver is mine. Mela looked at Mag with surprise. Although this cleaver was rectangular, it was easier to use than the chef's knife she had back home. After spending the whole afternoon together and obtaining Mag's permission, Mela started to address him as master. Of course. Mag nodded with a smile. That's all for today. You can go back after having dinner. Yes. Mela nodded. After pondering, Mela hesitantly said, then, my young mistress, Miss Eofi. She doesn't know how to cook. Mela nodded. Go and get her over for dinner then, Mag answered smilingly. He suddenly remembered that he had forgotten to ask Eofi to recommend service staff after he got caught up in teaching Mela how to cook. Yes. Thank you, Master. Mela smiled and placed all the sliced potatoes in a basin at the side. Master said they could be made into mashed potato and potato cakes. Irina watched Mela jog out, and turned to Mag who was about to make dinner, asking, do you intend to let Mela make the side dishes in the future? Yes. This child is quite talented in cooking, and she's very enthusiastic, so I want to teach her a few side dishes to go with the drinks to maintain Saipan Tavern's competitiveness. Mag nodded. However, this was equivalent to poaching from Eofi. Whether it would succeed, it had to depend on Eofi's attitude. He couldn't really force it, right? Mela ran back to the tavern, and yelled loudly, Miss, Master asked me to invite you over for dinner. Before she saw anyone, she smelled a burnt smell coming from the kitchen. There was also smoke. Is there a fire? Miss, are you all right? Mela ran to the kitchen, and kicked open the kitchen's door. Then, she saw Eofi, who was holding a spatula and covered in soot, turn around with reddened eyes. Meanwhile, there was a puddle of unknown black objects in the pot that was smoldering. Mela was stunned before coughing after choking on the smoke. She regained her wits, ran to a vat at the side, and poured a ladle of water into the pot to cool the unknown objects down. Then, she opened the window to let the smoke out. After doing all that, Mela pulled Eofi out of the kitchen with a perplexed expression, and asked, Miss, what's wrong? Are you trying to commit suicide? Sui my a*s. Eofi blushed. Fortunately, there was a layer of soot on her, so nobody could see the blush. She turned her head to the other side, and said in a low voice, I just want to cook a meal. It doesn't look like you are cooking here. If I came back a little later, the neighbors would be rushing in to put out the fire. Mela shook her head seriously. I said I was cooking means I was cooking. Eofi waved the spatula, and asked Mela, you have learned how to cook? Mela pulled out a cleaver. What are you doing? A mutiny. Eofi looked at Mela's cleaver, and then looked at her own spatula. Obviously, she wasn't very confident. No. This is the cleaver that Master gave me. Mela shook her head with a smile. She even waved it around. It's a breeze to use. Eofi was rather taken back. Master? Did Mr. Hades take you in as his disciple? Yes. Mr. Hades agreed to let me call him Master. I only learned how to use the cleaver today. Mela nodded with an ecstatic look. Eofi's face was filled with envy, but she still pursed her lips, and said, isn't it just cooking? I know how to cook too. You're setting fire here. Mela corrected her. Darn girl! How dare you! Eofi raised the spatula. No, no, no. My miss is the best. Master asked me to invite miss over for dinner. Let's wash up and change, Mela quickly said. Did Mr. Hades specially ask you to get me over for dinner? Eofi halted with a hint of joy in her eyes. No, I was worried that you might starve at home, and specially mentioned that to Master. Mela shook her head honestly. Eofi snorted, but she still put down the spatula, and went upstairs to wash up and change happily. Eofi changed her clothes, washed her face, put on light makeup, and then brought Mela to Saipan Tavern. During dinner, Mag asked Eofi, Miss Eofi, we would like to employ a few more servers, but we couldn't find any suitable candidates. I wonder if you know anybody who is suitable. Mr. Hades wants to recruit service staff. Eofi looked at Mag. After pondering briefly, Eofi understood. Saipan Tavern was having a roaring business now. It was obviously impossible to depend on Mr. Hades and his family alone. Titan Tavern had 8 service staff members, and even she felt overwhelmed in the past 2 days. She intended to employ 2 more servers. What kind of service staff do you intend to hire? How much is the salary? Eofi asked. They have to be fast workers and gracious hosts. It will be good if they can be younger. As for the salary, it will be around 5,000 copper coins. Of course, if they are good, I can pay them more, Mag answered. Mag didn't expect the service staff to come by themselves just like in Chaos City. As long as they could start to work immediately, it would be okay. After thinking briefly, Eofi said, I do know a few candidates like that. Are you free tomorrow afternoon? I can ask them to meet you at your tavern, and you can talk to them face to face. Thank you very much then. Mag's eyes shone. He had indeed asked the right person. After dinner, Eofi and Mela said their goodbyes. Titan Tavern was about to start its operation. After coming out from Saipan Tavern, Mela asked Eofi with wonder, Miss, didn't you ask to meet those servers for yourself? Mr. Hades' manpower crunch is worse than ours. He helped us so much, so this is nothing. Eofi shook her head with a smile. Oh. Mela nodded. After thinking briefly, she said, since that's the case, I will go help Master then. Eofi turned to look at Mela with a weird smile. Why? Do you already want to escape from me now? Chapter 2122 Are you a god? As long as you are fine, Miss Eofi. I didn't sleep for the entire night when I heard the news 2 days ago. I was afraid something untoward had happened to you, Marcus said to Eofi with relief. I'm sorry to have made the president worried. Eofi poured the liquor for the members of the Wine and Liquor Association with a smile. Fergus angrily said, Boris was really a scumbag, and to think that we've even given him the Silver Award for promoting the brewery industry. The others at the table had similar expressions. Everyone still couldn't quite believe it when the news of Boris being the perpetrator first spread. Only when Boris's taverns were closed down and the news of Boris committing suicide were confirmed did the news finally spread in their circle. Eofi's background was already very pitiful. Her parents died in a burglary. And Boris actually hired an assailant to commit the same crime against Eofi and reenact the nightmare in order to steal the Titan Liquors formula. Fortunately, Eofi was blessed. She escaped unscathed, and the perpetrator was punished. Eofi drank a glass with them smilingly before she went off to busy herself. She knew very well. She wasn't blessed, but she happened to meet Mr. Hades. After daily operations, Mag saw the last customer off, and was about to close the tavern when he saw Xi standing out there. Mag looked at her and pondered a little before saying, Do you want to come in for a drink? All right. Xi's answer was as short and cold as usual. Xi walked by Mag and straight into the tavern. Irina had already cleaned the tavern with magic. Amy was asleep with Ugly Duckling in her arms on the chair behind the bar counter, while Annie took out her drawing supplies from under the bar counter, and was about to start her work at night. She would like to have a drink, Mag explained to Irina. What would you like to drink? Irina asked Xi, treating her just like how a lady boss treated her customers. Mao Tai, please, Xi answered. Irina took a bottle of Mao Tai from the bar cabinet and waved gently. That bottle landed on the table in front of Xi lightly. Thank you, Xi said as she sat down, but her gaze was on Annie. Annie hugged the picture book in her arms tightly subconsciously. She was a little afraid instinctively. Mag went forward to block Xi's gaze, and smilingly said to Annie, Annie, go upstairs to draw, but you'll have to sleep early tonight. Annie nodded obediently, and ran upstairs with her picture book and drawing supplies. Do you like side dishes? Mag turned around to ask Xi that question with a smile. He knew Xi didn't mean any harm to Annie, otherwise she wouldn't have given him that ring. Looking at it currently, the elder things hadn't come to take Annie away, so he still treated Xi as a customer. Furthermore, Xi had saved their lives in the snow plain previously, so it was only right for him to make a few side dishes for her. Xi flicked a glance at the menu on the wall before calmly saying, I would like all of them. This is indeed how a willful adult places her orders. Mag raised his eyebrows slightly, but he didn't reject Xi's request. He was about to go to the kitchen to make them. That, but Xi spoke again. Mag faltered in his steps. He was a little surprised that there was a hint of emotions in Xi's perpetually calm tone of voice. Red braised pork. Do you know how to cook it? Xi said with her usual cold expression. Red braised pork? I do. Mag nodded and stared at Xi strangely. It seemed like Annie's drawing skills were indeed powerful. It made Xi bring up red braised pork on her own accord. There was a hint of joy in Xi's eyes, but she concealed it quickly. She murmured, add a helping of red braised pork too. Red braised pork. That would take some time, Mag said. Red braised pork wasn't hard to make, but it would take time to braise. It couldn't be served quickly. It's fine. I have time to wait. Xi was patient. But I want to sleep. Mag frowned. Xi was a little taken aback, and she stared at Mag. This fellow actually dared to reject her? Why don't I exchange a helping of red braised pork for a battleship with you? Mag said in a negotiating tone. No way, Xi answered coldly without any hesitation. This human was simply dreaming. He wanted her to exchange one of the Elder Thing's most advanced battleships for a food item. Then, how about exchanging for a main cannon? The one that sent Thulhu flying. Mag lowered his expectations. Xi simply looked at him quietly. She didn't even bother to open her mouth. I don't need the electromagnetic gun, even an ordinary cannon will do. Mag didn't want to give up yet. After all, this was a reward that the system would never give him. The Elder Thing's technology was way more advanced than the Norland continents and the Earth's. Any one of their cannons would be the main combat force against the army of the dead. You're a human knight, and she is a magic caster. You guys can't use the cannon even if you are given one, Xi said. You're looking down on me in this case. Isn't it just firing a cannon? Why are you looking down on me? Mag pursed his lips. Irina rolled her eyes at him and blushed. No one knew what she was thinking. I said before that the existence of the Elder Things has to be kept a secret. Do you think it's reasonable for a battleship's main cannon to appear in this world? Xi said to Mag. However, Mag seriously replied, any attacks made by the powerful are reasonable. At most, we will just carry it on our shoulders and use it as a weapon. That will be very reasonable. Xi frowned, as if it was hard for her to imagine that scene. The army of the dead is not alive. They do not fear, and they're not afraid of death. Even if all the races on the continent formed an allied force, there are families behind all those brave warriors who went up north to stop the army of the dead. It isn't just a simple number if they die on the battlefield. There will be many broken families. If possible, I want to give some more power to the Allied forces. We can reduce the Allied forces' casualties as long as we can kill more of the undead, Mag said gravely. Xi looked at Mag with a respectful gaze for the first time, but she still coldly said, I want to try its taste first before deciding if that red braised pork is worthy to exchange for a cannon. Sure. Please give me some time. Mag's eyes shone, and he went into the kitchen. He knew there was a chance to get the cannon tonight when she nodded. He needed a powerful solo combat weapon and a seductive bait. Was I convinced by him? Xi frowned slightly, feeling as though she had stepped into a trap. Irina sat across from Xi, looked straight into her eyes, and asked, Are you a god? Chapter 2123 The picture book indeed didn't lie. This was a beautiful, kind, freedom-loving, extremely nature-loving, and highly cohesive race. Oh, yes. That was the record left by the observer 100 years ago. According to her recent observations, the truth didn't seem to be like that. The wind forest, which was called the last paradise on the Norland continent, was in a mess. The humans' lowly hierarchical system was raising through the elves. She even saw elven slaves who were treated like cattle. These observations subverted her outlook of the elves. She pitied those elves who were treated like slaves, but her favor for this race was almost all eliminated. The beautiful elf in front of her didn't belong to the oppressed elven class. She should be from the ruling class. I'm not a god. Xi shook her head. Did you come to save this world? Irina continued to ask. In the snow plain that day, the glowing gigantic object made an attack that shocked her. It even sent Thulhu flying backwards. I didn't come to save this world. I'm not obliged to do that. Xi continued to shake her head. You should know that I'm his wife, so I know everything. Irina smiled and crossed her legs. Since your target is also Thulhu, then you're here to save this world. Only a real powerhouse can save this world. We can't. Mag, who was chopping pork in the kitchen, enjoyed their conversation. Irina was indeed better than him when it came to praising people. Xi listened to Irina's words with a frown, as if she was deep in thought. This is your issue, Xi answered. Irina shook her head with a smile. No. You appearing here and interacting and collaborating with us, the so-called primitive existences, means that this isn't just our issue. Xi sat up straight and looked at this elf in front of her seriously for the first time. Irina stopped smiling, and said in a low voice, You might have come from the heavens or the underground, this doesn't matter to us. Just like those marks would never have the real gods appear. What we want is just a world where we can survive, even if this world has a border and an upper limit. Hence, we can continue to stay in this not very rich world, but you have to let us survive first, even if it's just by resealing those fellows. Xi stared at Irina silently for a long time before saying, I am the upper limit of the Elder Thing's assistance to this world, and I have to make sure that I won't expose the Elder Thing's existence. According to the requirements, you guys shouldn't be in this world, or have this memory and this conversation. Irina leaned against the chair, and smilingly said, If you are the Elder Thing's upper limit, then your only choice is to work with us. I'll admit that you guys are my only choice. Xi nodded. Xi began to reassess Irina inwardly again. Talking to this woman was more stressful than talking to Mag. However, this also meant they were indeed good collaboration partners. She didn't like to work with idiots. Mag carried a few side dishes out from the kitchen, and said to Xi, If you Elder Things can't send us any men, perhaps you can just send us weapons. We will rearm all the races on the Norland continent, and fight with Thulhu and the devils. You can fight a proxy war. A proxy war. Xi frowned. This was a new term to her. However, Mag had already explained that it was to let the Elder Things supply the weapons to the Norland continent's races. This isn't something I can decide. Xi shook her head. Mag gravely said, I hope you elder things can evaluate the risk of the races on the Norland continent giving up fighting, and becoming the devil's servants completely. You should know very well that an allied force that is formed at the last minute isn't very reliable. Moreover, they have deep hatred for one another. I will relay your suggestion. Xi nodded at Mag. Please enjoy. Mag put down the side dishes, and opened the Mao Tai's cover for Xi. He didn't have much hope for Xi's promise. After all, this indeed wasn't something that she could decide. As for what kind of status the Norland continent had in the elder thing's minds, he could only probe them slowly. Xi ate and drank quietly. Irina picked up a glass, and began to drink with her. Mag looked at Irina, trying to say something. After 3 glasses of Mao Tai, Irina was slightly drunk too. She looked at Xi with narrowed eyes, and smilingly asked, "How do you elder things live? Do you also eat, sleep, and hit the dots?" Xi put down her chopsticks, and asked Irina seriously, "Who are the dots? Why are you hitting them?" "Dots are dots. Everyone is hitting dots, so we just do it," Irina answered with a smile. "We don't hit dots there." Xi shook her head. They did eat and sleep, but they seemed to lack an interesting exercise. "Do you fly when you go out?" Irina continued to ask. "Or, do you use teleportation portals?" "We choose our transportation depending on the distance, but the teleportation portals are already phased out." Mag listened to the 2 women's chit-chat in the kitchen. He couldn't help feeling amazed that women could chit-chat no matter what, even when one of them was already drunk. He knew Irina most likely wanted to get Xi drunk, and then get words out of her. However, Xi was already someone who could walk out of the tavern by herself after drinking a bottle of Mao Tai and a bottle of whiskey. Irina, who would get drunk after 3 glasses, simply couldn't compare to her. Okay. Soon, Xi looked at Irina, who was lying drunk on the table, and ate the drunkard peanuts calmly. Right then, a rich meat aroma whiffed out from the kitchen. "Smells so good." Xi's actions paused, and she looked at the kitchen with amazement. This meat aroma was so rich that it was enticing. She couldn't help gulping. This was an aroma that exceeded her cognition and an aroma that she had never smelled before in the underground city. Only the Buddha jumps over the wall previously could compare to it. However, compared to the Buddha jumps over the wall's aroma, which was intertwined with many delicious scents, this aroma was much purer. It was simply the aroma of meat. She could already imagine how the red braised pork was being cooked until it was red and glowy in the pot. Meanwhile, her current situation was like that of a mermaid who had just woken up on her bed, and was attracted by that sudden aroma. The picture book indeed didn't lie. Xi took a sip to suppress her shock, and couldn't help looking forward to it. "Your red braised pork." Mag put down the bowl, and the red braised pork jiggled, looking even more enticing. "Thank you," Xi said while her gaze was fixed on the red braised pork in front of her. This was the first time in her life that she couldn't wait for a food item. The cube-shaped red braised pork was almost exactly the same as in the picture book. However, compared to the flat drawing, the real red braised pork in front of her shimmered slightly with a layer of oil, and the enticing aroma in the air brought along an even stronger impact. Xi opened her mouth slightly and gulped. She looked exactly like the little mermaid who saw the red braised pork for the first time in the picture book. Xi looked up, and asked Mag, "Isn't there supposed to be a bowl of rice too?" Mag was slightly taken aback. He couldn't help laughing as he replied, "You're really stringent." In the picture book, the red braised pork was served along with a bowl of rice. The red braised pork wasn't a side dish. Even when it was well done, it would still be greasy. However, together with a bowl of rice, it would be perfect. Xi wasn't in a hurry to pick up her chopsticks, because the little mermaid in the picture book ate the dish with rice. It looked much more delicious than eating the red braised pork on its own. Soon, Mag came out with a bowl of rice. He had cooked it while he was simmering the red braised pork. "Thank you." Xi received the bowl and thanked Mag. She picked up the chopsticks, and prepared to tuck in. Wait a section. We have agreed earlier that if you are satisfied with this red braised pork, you will give me a cannon, right? Mag said to Xi. Xi looked at Mag and then at the red braised pork in front of her. After a brief hesitation, she nodded. All right, please enjoy. Mag kept the tray and took 2 steps back. Xi picked up a piece of red braised pork with her chopsticks. This wild boar meat was cut into long cubes, and the thick gravy dyed the wild boar meat a deep red color. The interlaying fat and lean pork was soft and bouncy. This human's cutting skill is indeed an astonishing artwork. Xi looked at the meat that was equally cut at all sides with appreciation. Even the angles were perfect. Then, she fed it into her mouth. The tender pork melted almost immediately in her mouth. The lean meat was chewy and not dry. The pork skin was soft and sticky. It wasn't hard to bite down. She bit softly into the meat, and the sweet and fragrant sauce seeped out from the meat. At this moment, the beauty of the pork was brought out to the fullest. It was fatty but not greasy, and was fragrant and tender. This taste. Xi's eyes widened. It was as if a giant, wild black boar had bumped into her heart, and it galloped around like how her heart was beating. The taste buds were cheering, and her body was trembling due to the excitement. The sensation of joy due to the scrumptiousness was actually that impactful. Ah! She opened her mouth slightly, and could not help but let out a soft moan. It was too exquisite. This sensation made her excited, and also made her feel blissful. However, Xi soon realized her gaffe, and a rare blush appeared on her face. She picked up the bowl in front of her, and ate a mouthful of rice. The soft rice had a new rice's fragrance. The rice got even more fragrant after chewing, and the slight greasiness was quickly suppressed by the sweet and fragrant white rice. It was as though it was meant for the red braised pork. She got it. The picture book was real. Even she couldn't resist such delicious red braised pork, let alone the innocent little mermaid. Additionally, marrying a prince who could make such delicious red braised pork didn't seem so hard to imagine. This wasn't a love at first sight story, but a seduction by food story. Thinking in that manner made the story much more reasonable. The little mermaid had to be very desperate when she thought of how she couldn't eat such delicious red braised pork ever again, and how the chef whom she reserved was being stolen from her. Xi couldn't help popping another piece of red braised pork into her mouth. She felt the taste blossoming on the tip of her tongue, and she couldn't hide the arc of her upturned lips. The bowl of rice was soon finished, but there were still a few pieces of red braised pork, and she hadn't eaten the gravy that she was craving yet. Just as Xi was hesitating if she should ask Mag for another bowl of rice, Mag already put a new bowl of rice in front of her and a spoon in the red braised pork's bowl. Xi looked up at Mag, and felt good about this human for the first time. At least in the aspect of food, he was very understanding and considerate. Mag smiled. If it weren't for that cannon, he would be sleeping with his wife in a warm bed by now. He wouldn't be serving her here. Soon, Xi finished the bowl of rice together with the red braised pork's gravy. Burp. Xi covered her mouth and burped. That feeling of satiation was really so comfortable. Thank you for your hospitality. The red braised pork is very delicious, Xi said to Mag seriously. Thank you. Mag nodded smilingly at Xi. Xi used a tissue to wipe her mouth before walking to the door. With her usually cold voice, she said, I'll leave the cannon at that mountain 160 kilometers north of Rodu. You'd better ship it away by tonight. Thank you. Mag watched Xi's figure disappear at the door before saying a sincere thank you again. After carrying the drunk Irina and the sleeping Amy upstairs, Mag activated the tavern's spell formation before leaving right away. The purple-striped griffin landed on the peak of that mountain 160 kilometers north of Rodu. The 100-meter-long cannon was placed vertically at the peak like a pillar supporting the sky. How awe-inspiring! Mag went 2 rounds around the mountain on Ozzy's back before landing on the peak. And next to this cannon, there were 4 crates of ammunition. There were a total of 24 artillery shells. I guess this should be a miracle in the history of trade, right? Mag caressed the iron beast that made him shudder. He actually traded for it with a bowl of red braised pork and 2 bowls of rice. He hoped the future generations would not label this trade as a scam. In that ice plain that day, Mag had witnessed the firepower of Xi's battleship personally. The firepower of one cannon was already above a 10th tier magic caster's might, and the artillery shells left behind by Xi were all cluster warheads. It was the kind of bomb that was more suitable for eliminating targets that were densely packed together. She's good and understanding. I'll treat her to other goodies next time she visits. Mag nodded, feeling very satisfied with Xi. After keeping the cannon and ammunition with a space magic ring, Mag leaped onto the griffin's back. He looked toward the north, and hesitated briefly before ordering Ozzy to fly northwards. He had already gotten the cannon, so he really should find a base now. Ending the war beyond the Roth Empire's borders was the best promise to the civilians. Chapter 2125 is this system? An idiot. Mag chose a few spots, and marked them on the map before returning to Rodu. He wasn't sure what were Thulhu's considerations right now, but it could be deemed good news now that the army of the dead showed no signs of coming southwards before the allied force could form and head north. And 2 days later, all the races would hold a meeting at Chaos City to sign the peace treaty again and establish a new alliance to resist Thulhu and the army of the dead. This girl Connie is surprisingly capable. The next morning, Mag received the latest news from the Orcs. The Fok tribe had taken over the Og tribe. The Orc race that was fractured for many years was finally unified, and Chief Connie from the Fok tribe was unanimously elected as the chieftain. Mag was in a daze. That timid girl from back then had become the queen of the Twilight Forest in the blink of an eye. Irina accepted the water that Mag gave to her, and downed it in a gulp. Still a little hazy due to the hangover, she asked Mag, "Did that woman get drunk last night too?" "Yes. She was a little drunk too." Mag nodded. He didn't want to tell Irina the fact that Xi happily walked away after drinking 2 bottles of liquor and eating a bowl of red braised pork with 2 bowls of rice. That would be too cruel. As expected, Irina became much more energetic after hearing that. With a hint of smugness, she said, "Ha, I knew her alcohol tolerance was only so-so. That lass Connie is already the queen of the Twilight Forest now." Mag passed the letter to Irina with a smile. Something like that actually happened. Irina took the letter with wonder. After skimming through it, she, too, smiled as she said, "That's rather surprising. She actually killed Oster personally. Her master is the hairless monk, after all. Killing Oster, who had lost an arm, is still quite reasonable." Mag nodded. Mag took out the map next, and talked with Irina about the few positions that he had chosen in the north. "System, where's my reward for finding the snail yesterday? Why aren't you giving it to me? My snacks are almost finished." Amy lay on the bed, and complained inwardly. Although little mistress found an edible snail yesterday, you have sought help from your parents, so the system judged the mission as incomplete," the system answered carefully. "Humph. You didn't say that I couldn't seek help, and now you used it as an excuse to decline me. I'm not going to play with you anymore. You can play on your own from now on." Amy got up from bed, and went downstairs in a huff. The system. Life is so hard. It is so demeaning. Little mistress? Baby? Little precious? Little ancestor, the life experience system finally panicked after realizing that its host had blocked it. It could very likely become the very first system that was abandoned by its host. And it was because of a snack package reward? I have no choice. Seems like I have to seek help from my seniors. *******. Amy went downstairs, ate 3 soup dumplings in a row, a bowl of congee with pork and century egg, and a bowl of sweet tofu pudding before she felt less angry. Little Amy, you found an edible snail yesterday, so what did the wishing well reward you with? Mag teased Amy. The little one had surely redeemed the snack gift package again. Amy got angry again as soon as Mag mentioned it. Putting her arms on her hips, she angrily said, "Humph! That stupid wishing well! I'm not going to talk to it anymore." "Idiot, idiot, idiot!" Mag smilingly asked, "What happened? It didn't give you a reward. Anyway, I am not going to talk to it anymore. I'm going to fill up the well later," Amy replied seriously. "Sure. Father will help you fill it up later." Mag nodded. It seemed like that system needed to be educated. "Little mistress. I was wrong. I know I was wrong already. Please talk to me," the system's humble voice rang in Amy's mind. However, Amy wasn't moved at all. After breakfast, Mag found a shovel in the tool shed, and behaved as if he was really going to fill up the well with Amy. ***** on the system forum. Post for help, yes. It's me again. What should I do if my little mistress blocked me? Urgent. P.S. The little mistress and her father even want to fill me up. Help. Replies were as follows. Most powerful guiding system, is this system an idiot? Star student system. Systems are existences that belong to the information flow. We don't exist physically, so how is your host going to fill you up? Perhaps we have a physical system lately? Bootlicker system, told you that you need to suck up to your host until you have everything you want. God of cookery cultivation system, embarrassing. Usually systems like me ignore the host. How can the system be threatened by the host? Villain system, moderator, can we mute the guy above? Otherwise, I will send my host over to kill its host and his entire family. The God of cookery cultivation system replies to the villain system, come over then. For notice, the God of cookery cultivation system is muted for 7 days due to posting antagonistic expressions. Mag and Amy went to the backyard with a shovel each. Irina and Annie stood at the door, and watched the two of them with befuddlement. They didn't know how the well could anger the father and daughter duo. Rest in peace. Amy shoveled up some soil with her little shovel, and solemnly spoke before pouring the soil down the well. Then, an amazing scene appeared. Bags of snacks began to gush out of the well continuously. Amy stopped her actions, and looked at the Mimi prawn snacks that fell next to her feet. Then, she stared at the gushing snacks with brightened eyes. This is... Irina and Annie watched this scene with shock. Did you prepare this? Irina asked Mag. You can say that too, Mag replied with a laugh. He had intended to help Amy keep her system a secret from others, Irina included. Wow! Is this the latest chips flavor? Green lime? I don't think I've tried this before. Amy had already tossed her shovel aside. She grabbed a big bag of chips, and started eating them. As for filling up the well, she forgot all about it. See, the little chowhound was so easily appeased. Little ancestor, are you satisfied now? The system's voice rang in Amy's mind again. For the sake of so many snacks, I'll forgive you temporarily. Amy ate the chips happily, hugging a few more packets of chips in her arms. Then I really have to thank you, bro, I can only lend you that many. Remember to pay me back next month. 5 points. Thank you, big bro. We can be considered brothers now. Please take care of me in the future. Nonsense. Who is your brother? I have always been bossy and dominant to my host. You have to learn from me and be a system with principles. Alright, end of trade.